Under the moonlight, a man finds himself standing in front of a mansion. He takes out a pocket watch and speaks about someone named Hong Wei-yu, a person who is the pillar of that place who dedicated his entire life to his family and country. After an analysis, the doctor informs everyone that the elder will not survive the night. On the bed lies an old man, 98 years old. Then the door starts to open and everyone turns around. A guy with glasses enters, stating that the time available to him is only 13 minutes and 19 seconds. The guards draw their weapons, asking who he is and how he got there. The young man releases the watch and accelerates his time by 100 times. With this, the armed men appear frozen from his perspective. Those who can still move ask what he is doing and what power that is. The young man apologizes for scaring them, but says he only stopped the time for some of them. As the man was about to say something catches his attention. The young man had accelerated his own time again and approached the bed. He then told Mr. Hong that he was going to introduce himself. Saying his name was Mr. Liu, he explained that he was a vendor who walked the human world, and that he only traded one product, time. 10 days ago, before it all began. In the message, the mother seems worried about her son struggling in the big city, while the protagonist thinks that in a city like that, a normal person is insignificant. The person who accepted this job full of dreams disappeared a long time ago. There were many dreams he wanted to achieve, but unfortunately, he is not the main character. In reality, he is like this. Society is cruel and not even hard work guarantees success. Looking up at the sky, he says he didn't want to have to live a life like this, when someone suddenly passes by and bumps into him saying they are late for work. The protagonist shouts to complain. However, with a watch in his eyes, something catches his attention. Above the person, he can see they have 3 seconds of life left, which goes down to 2 seconds, 1 second, and the person is hit by a car. The body falls to the ground as people run to see what happened. But the protagonist is standing there watching the crowd. Above each one, he can see what seems to be their lifespan. With his hand on his face, he wonders if he is hallucinating. And strangely, a pocket watch appears in his hand. As soon as he presses the button, time freezes and even raindrops do not touch the ground. Curious, he approaches someone and touches their back. As he withdraws his hand, it seems to pull something out, and the person's lifespan is reduced by 10 minutes. Looking at his own hand, he wonders what it is. Time resumes for the person, and he thinks that apparently he has received an incredible ability. Now he controls time. That was the opportunity to change his fate, since by controlling time, he controls people's lives. Regardless of how important someone is or not, time passes equally for everyone. But it is different what each person can do with the same amount of time. This creates the opportunity to have a negotiation between people. However, for him to extract time, the person must accept. In addition, he can accelerate or decelerate time. After making some notes and discoveries, someone enters the house. The girl is soaking wet and says she needs to change clothes quickly, while our boy just keeps an eye on her. As she notices, she asks why he is already home and if he interrupted anything. He says no, as he is quite relaxed. She then withdraws, thinking that normally he seems a bit lifeless. But strangely today, he seemed confident and perhaps a little attractive. At the same moment, she shakes her head, saying she cannot think about these things as she needs to marry someone rich, and turns around saying she's going to the bedroom. Lulai thinks she is smart and still has her morals. She is not someone a normal person would have a chance with, but he is no longer a normal person. After all, now time will be a commodity to be bought and sold, and he is the only negotiator. He can buy time from those who need money and sell it to those who need time. In the park, with a suitcase, he needs success in the first negotiation, having taken all the money he had been saving. Observing the crowd, he knows the old people have no time to sell, and a very young mother has nothing to negotiate as she needs to take care of her child. He wants to buy time from someone, but at least someone who has plenty of life left. At this moment, something catches his attention. Next to him, a guy dressed as a bear says that he will soon buy a birthday present. When his boss appears, he orders him to go back and hand out flyers. Lulai starts to think this might be a good opportunity. A high school guy with 65 years of life left who needs money. This will be his first client. Sometime later, this guy receives his payment for the job. The problem is that the amount is small, but he is motivated to work hard. He goes to a diner and orders the cheapest ramen they have. Sitting exhausted in the chair, the protagonist approaches him. Seeing him place the suitcase, the guy asks who he is. Without saying anything, he sits down and accelerates time for both of them by 100 times. With this, everyone is basically static in place. The guy asks what that is. Lou adjusts his glasses and says he just tweaked how time passes for those outside. Frightened, the guy bangs on the wall, asking what he wants. Our boy stands up and says he will introduce himself. He is the time negotiator. The guy seems incredulous and asks if he is insane. The protagonist calls him by name and says he need not worry, as he has been negotiating for a long time. The guy finds it strange that he knows his name. With this, Mr. Liu raises his hand and shows the guy the time he has left. He is scared, and Liu tells him exactly that. He has a long life of 80 years. It's so excessive that he could sell a few years. Jake asks if time can really be sold. He doesn't know its value. Liu throws the suitcase against the wall and says they will use the rule of how much value he generates in a year. But As he is a student, 1 year of his life is worth 300,000. Zheng knows that many people don't even earn that in a year. The problem is that he has to remember he is selling his life. Lu pulls out the contract and tells him to sign his name. Zheng ponders, thinking that with those 300,000 he can buy Kim's present and even do things he always wanted. He concludes that working is the same as selling his time. Impatient, Lu says he will leave. Grinding his teeth, Zheng thinks it's just a year and says he will sell it. Lu smiles, saying that as soon as he signs, the suitcase is his. After hesitating for a second, he signs. With that, the contract dissolves and the lifespan passes to Lu. The guy loses 1 year, and Lu says now it's all done. With a snap of his fingers, everything returns to normal. And he approaches, saying that now it's complete, the suitcase belongs to him. The guy smiles, thinking he can give a present to the girl, buy the game he wants, and even a bunch of sneakers. Lu says that if he wants to negotiate again, just call. However, the guy decides not to take it, saying he already lost a year and doesn't want to do it again. Lu smiles, leaves the card on the table, saying he knows he will need it. The first transaction was much smoother than he imagined. Now the question is who he will sell the time to. He knows it is the most precious thing in the world, something everyone needs, but no one can deliver. Researching, he finds out about a man from a family who is about to die. He recognizes the name as the owners of hundreds of businesses, and smiles, saying his first client will be an unbelievable figure. Back at the mansion, under the moonlight, when the doctor said the man would not make it through the night, on the bed the elder could not even speak, wondering if his time had really come. In his consciousness, he didn't want to give up. There were still things he wanted to do for his family, and he needed at least 1 more year or even 1 more day. He didn't want to die like this, and that's when something made him wake up. It was at this moment that Mr. Lu introduced himself, saying he was a merchant who dealt with only one product: time. The people in the room seemed incredulous. However, the guy in the brown suit told them to take a look. All the other guys were frozen. Lu said the elder had no more than 10 minutes left, and the man asked how much this time would cost. The protagonist replied that time is different for each person, and he charged 1/5 of the amount of money the person generated in a year. A guy of the classes said that considering the companies the elder had, it was too high a value. However, the protagonist reminded them of the saying. Not even a mountain of gold can buy a second of time, he said, calling them all ignorant mortals. When the man shouted it, he drew his pocket watch, and in front of the elder appeared Rong Yu with 5 minutes of life left. He told Rong that no matter how much he had dominated the planet for decades, time came for everyone, and he was the only one who controlled it. The elder seemed to want to say something but couldn't. One of the henchmen approached, trying to understand what he was saying. Raising his hand with difficulty, he could only pronounce the word live. The man in the brown suit then said he would accept the offer on behalf of his grandfather. Our protagonist made the contract and said it just needed Mr. Wrong's signature. The man warned that perhaps Mr. Wrong wouldn't be able to. However, Lu didn't seem to care and said the man's time was running out. He looked at the paper and then at the 40 seconds left. At that moment, he felt the determination to finish the plans he had not managed to complete. With difficulty, he lifted himself up. He received the pen with 3 seconds left and managed to sign in the last second. With that, he received the time that had been promised in the contract. The room glowed and Lu smiled. At the same moment, the old man's clock went to 365 days. The men in the room recognized that indeed the time seemed to have increased, and Mr. Wrong removed his mask. Looking at his own hands, he felt a strange sensation. Before he could say anything, he was congratulated by the protagonist, who said he admired such determination. And with that, the transaction was complete. The men approached the elder, asking if he was feeling well. Disbelieving, the elder felt as if he were a few years younger. Even though it was still his old body, he was full of vitality. Could that be the power of time? Lu only congratulated him and said that was all he had to do there. One of the men was about to ask for payment, but at that very moment, he disappeared. A piece of paper fell into his hand, saying he expected the family's payment in that account. With that, the immobilized henchman began to move again. The blonde man who was there asked what happened to Mr. Wrong and why he was standing. He asked if it was the famous terminal lucidity, when someone feels very energetic days before death. The elders stood up and told everyone to be quiet. No one could know what had happened there. The blonde man with glasses didn't know what they were talking about and why he didn't remember anything, until he recalled the man who was beside the bed and wondered what had happened. Then the man came and handed the message to Mr. Wrong, who instructed them to send the money to that account immediately. He couldn't imagine that something like that existed in the world. It wasn't the type of person who was just more talented or stronger. It was someone who defied logic. And he said that from now on they had to become friends with this Mr. Lu. With hands raised to the moon, he said that this was the feeling of controlling destiny. His plan had worked. It didn't matter if it was an elite family or a simple college student. Everyone in the city was in his hands. The question now was what to do when he had more and more clients. He would need a system for that. Observing the city, he saw some clubs, and at that moment, he had the idea for the name Eternal Club. In that place, clubs for exclusive elite members of society were common. He could create something even better, where he would be the authority above all. By negotiating time, he could create an army that no one could oppose. The club would influence the entire world. and the level of the members would be defined by the amount of money they invested there. Just to join would be 10 million, with level 6 at 6 trillion. And those who wanted to join with time would have to pay 1 year of their time, or even up to 26 years. He would have to create a chain of employees, and the Eternal Club would be the biggest and most mysterious organization in the world, where he would have absolute authority. His position in the world would be the same as a god. Walking through the city, he knew that if he wanted something like that, he would need reliable people. And usually, those kinds of people are the ones with the worst jobs in society. At that moment, a taxi driver stopped and asked if he needed to go somewhere. The man's name was Siga Hai, and he had 13 years of life left. The protagonist entered the taxi thinking that this was one of the people destroyed by the hardships of life. Seeing him in the rearview mirror, the man said that by his clothes, he seemed to be quite successful. At that moment, $16 million arrived in his account. Then he heard a conversation between the taxi driver and his son, where it seemed that the grandfather was unwell. He stopped the taxi suddenly and said not to worry, that he would get the money and go there now. He turns to the protagonist and asks him to get out of the taxi as he needs to go to the hospital. Lulai says it's fine, he also has something to take care of at the hospital. On the way, the father says his dream was to send his son to a good school, but he failed. And now his father needs money for treatment, but he has failed again. He apologizes for venting, but Lu doesn't seem to mind. Using the watch, he accelerates their time. A short time later, they are already at the hospital and the man finds it strange. He turns to talk to the protagonist who has disappeared. However, he left a lot of money in the bank. The man stands up to return it and sees he left a message. It said that it was to help him, and if he needed more money, he could just send a message, but it wouldn't be free. The old man was moved and thanked him, while Lu was right nearby. He didn't plan to help others for free. It's just that he feels that soon he will have a new client. Right at that moment, something catches his attention. A blonde guy with blood on his hands asks what he is looking at. He bumps into the protagonist, telling him to get out of the way. A paper falls out of the guy's pocket and Lu smiles, saying that someone has indeed come. Sometime later, he is back home. Something catches his attention next to him, and wow, he wonders if she went to a party by any chance. Lu goes to the closet and brings a blanket. Suddenly, she wakes up asking what the crazy guy is doing. Feeling embarrassed, he tries to say he was afraid she might catch a cold. She thanks him and says she will go back to her room. With that, she closes the door. Lu keeps thinking that they are roommates, so why is she so cold? But the psychopath in him says he likes that reaction, otherwise it wouldn't be very interesting. In his room, he knows he will need some subordinates to achieve his plans, and the plan is to make them loyal, as with the contract he will create. If a person breaks the rules, they lose all their life, affirming that soon the club will officially open. The next day, he comes out of the room stretching, and Yang asks if he isn't going to work today. He says he took a day off, and she thinks that he has apparently given up on everything and will go back to his parents' farm. She leaves thinking that in the end, he is a good person. It's just that people without presence don't survive in the capital. But of course, he doesn't need to work anymore. Sometime later, he goes to the real estate agency. A girl receives him and he says he is there just to take a look at houses. When she was showing him the house documents, Yang appears asking what he is doing there. He replies that he wants to buy a house and remembers she worked there, so he came. Yang is confused, wondering since when does this guy have money for a down payment on a house. She finds it strange but decides to sit down because she can't lose the commission. She asks him about the estimated value and if by any chance he is getting married. The friend gets curious, but she says she will handle it because he's a friend of hers. She starts to take a look and says she found some that might fit in well. Looking at the paper, Lu says that those are too rundown. She finds it odd and tells him to stop joking. What does he want? To buy a mansion with his salary? Our protagonist smiles, saying that's not impossible. Yang seems to lose her temper and says she understands. She gets up and tells her friend to take care of it. The girl asks if they aren't friends, and Yang replies that it's better for her to handle it. The other employee informs that Yang went to handle something, but she brought the larger houses. Watching her from afar, Wei thinks she got upset, but she still looks seductive that way. The girl was about to start talking about one of the mansions when he immediately asked her to bring the contract. She was confused, trying to explain about the house, saying it cost 50 million. He just said he wasn't joking and would buy that house now and only from her. With that, the girl ran to talk to the manager, saying the most expensive house had been bought. Yang turned around and asked if that was possible. She knows his situation very well since she has been living with him for 2 years. Surely he will come up with some story when the contract arrives. The manager arrives and says the initial payment is 500,000, but Lu says there is no initial payment. He came to buy everything at once. The staff are speechless, and some time later, the most expensive house in that place was indeed bought for 50 million. The girls were whispering about it, and at the table, Yang couldn't believe he really paid all at once. Thinking that this bastard was indeed playing with her, now she was angry at herself for having spent 2 years near a guy like this. However, she kept going out every day to find other people. Sometime later, Lu receives a call from the taxi driver. He asks if Lu can provide more money, and Lu responds affirmatively. He believes it's time for them to meet again. In front of a bus station, Lu appears. The taxi driver is surprised and Lu suggests they change locations. In the cafe, the taxi driver explains that his father had a hemorrhage today. He had already borrowed money from everyone he could. Everyone told him to give up because he had no more credit, but he doesn't want to let his father die in bed. Desperate, he shouts that he needs money by any means necessary. He says it doesn't matter what it takes, he will do anything. Lu says he can provide money and a lot of it, but what he wants in return is life. The Hai is startled and asks if he is being asked to die or do something illegal. Lu smiles and snaps his fingers, saying it's completely legal. At that moment, the man's time appears, showing 13 years of life left. Lu explains how the negotiation works and asks if he wants to sell a few of his surplus years. The Hai is confused and questions how much he would get for his time. Lu tells him he pays 3 times what he earns in a year per year, so he would receive 300,000 for each year of life. The man looks at his own watch and sees that he will die at 53, but he believes it's enough, and asks Mr. Lai if he will really receive 1.35 million. Lu says he is correct, but he would only have 10 years of life left. The father thinks that 10 years will be enough to see his son have a child. That means his role as a father will be complete. Lai hands him the contract and tells him to sign his name. The old man says he understands and thanks him. He gives him a card saying it already contains the transferred money, and the man says he will return to the hospital. With that, Lai leaves. But he wonders if, now that the burden is lifted, when the time comes, will he regret it? Suddenly, a bottle shatters at his feet. A blonde man leaning against the wall says he will have to pay for that. Lai recognizes him as the same man from before and thinks he looks like a stray dog. The man approaches him, asking what he is laughing at. Lai immediately says he is laughing at his diagnosis and the time he has left. Lu knows he has exactly 26 days to live. He then removes his hand from his collar and tells him if he wants to live, he should follow him. Walking through the alleys, he asks for the man's name and disease. He responds that he has leukemia and his name is Peng Hao. Li asks why he isn't at home as his family must be worried. Peng Hao replies that he ran away from home and everyone thinks he's already dead. Lai seems interested in the guy's background and says he will give him a test. He slows down time by 100 times. The man asks what happened and Lai says he has no ill intentions. He is just a time vendor. He can prolong the guy's life, but the price will be loyalty. Seeing the numbers in front of him, Peng Hao thinks it's impossible, that this is just an illusion, and asks what Lai's plans are. He seems to like that response. While Peng Hao has no idea why this guy wants his help, he is practically dead and wants to help his 2 younger siblings. As soon as he received the disease diagnosis, he ran away from home. That way his family wouldn't waste money on his treatment. The plan was to earn as much money as possible before dying to send it to them. But everything would change if he could stay alive. Li asks if he has thought about the proposal. The man kneels, thinking if he dies, he will obey. Lai then smiles, saying that as a reward he will gain 100 days of a healthy body. Peng Hao's time increases to 126 days and he collapses. Li asks how he feels, noting that the disease seems to have disappeared. He kneels even more, saying that from today he will be a loyal dog, even if it means doing something that costs him his life. Lai gives him a card and tells him to dye his hair and go to the address on the card tomorrow. He also tells him to call him Master. The man agrees, saying, "All right then, Master." At that moment, Lai disappears. At home, he thinks this is the great beginning of the Eternal Club. For now, he has to be selective since the initial members will always be the most loyal. And to perpetuate their development, he will need more talented people. But regardless of who they are, receiving this offer would be a great fortune. At that moment, he hears a noise from the side. The dear Yang arrives with force and blushing. Seeing him, she thinks to herself that he really is a bastard. She approaches him, saying she never imagined he would return. Observing her, the protagonist wonders if she is drunk. He quickly realizes she isn't, and in fact, it's all part of an act. However, she plays along and approaches, asking why he kept his identity hidden. He was about to say something, but she covers his mouth, saying he has gone too far. He asks what she will do as she replies that as punishment, he has to drink with her. However, the girl is clumsy and accidentally spills some on him. With that, he smiles. As he observes her, he thinks that if it were the old Lai, he would have given in by now. But now she will have to be disciplined. He takes the package and throws it into the room. Looking at him, Yang knew he wasn't a cold and heartless guy like the others. She just needed to show sincerity. However, when she opened her eyes, he was standing there doing nothing, and she asked what the problem was. He replied that she was much cuter and different from before where she was staring at him. On her knees, she apologizes, saying she will try to explain. She came from a very poor family and is afraid, and he tells her to be quiet. He says he likes a smart girl. However, he is no longer the old Lai, so she will have to show how capable she is of captivating him. The warrior who was captivated. After that, they played Monopoly all night. The next day, when he was on the computer, she rushed out of the room saying she was late. But Lai told her to calm down and rest because he had already called her workplace. She thanked him and said she didn't even know how to repay such kindness. He said he knew she just needed to go and cook something. With that, she left. This boy is inspired. The first thing he did with the money was put the woman in the kitchen. At that moment, someone knocks on the door. When he opens it, it's Peng Hao, who apologizes for being late. Lai says he likes his spirited attitude, but asks him to stop with the master stuff. Hearing him from afar, Yang wonders about his identity. She serves a drink to him and Peng Hao, who blushes. Lion shows the contract papers. He tells Peng Hao that if he accepts, he can also choose some things so the protagonist doesn't make him do them. Immediately, he stretches out his hand, takes it, signs it, and it's done. Lee asks why he trusts him so much, and the guy says he just doesn't want to disappoint him. The protagonist smiles, saying if that's the case, they are partners. He then tells Peng Hao he has two things to do. First, to find a guy from the university named Zheng Bowen, and then to send this to his address. Peng Hao takes the paper and says it's already done. Immediately, he leaves, and Lai is impressed with the boy's motivation. The plan now is to set up an easier way to communicate with clients. He just needs to find a good programmer who is almost dying, and that won't be very difficult. Meanwhile, at a government base, the people there are being attacked by a hacker, and everyone is in disbelief. Who dares to do something like this against their systems? A hooded man broadcasted to the entire world that he was dying, but he was going to take the world down with him. That cyber attack made headlines in all the newspapers. The man even managed to crash the stock market. The news caught Lai's attention. He called Peng Hao and said they would ask Mr. Wrong for a favor. In front of a bunch of screens, a boy asks if they saw his masterpiece. Even though the disease is already in a critical state, he can still invade any system. At that moment, he feels a pain in his chest. Clearly, he is not in the best health. He tries to grab the medicine but slips from the chair and everything falls to the floor. Desperate, he crawls because he knows he doesn't have much time left. And before he dies, he wants to take the whole world down with him. Then his computer starts showing a bunch of errors. He wonders who is managing to break through the barriers he set up. A message from Mr. Lee appears, telling him to visit him, that he will save him. He is impressed that they already know who he is, but it seems they want to play mysterious. But then the message changes, and Mr. Lai says he can see his time, sending a link for him to enter. The guy laughs, thinking they want to know his location. He says he is not afraid of being discovered and clicks the file. A live transmission begins with Mr. Lai welcoming Robert Tappan Morris. The guy wonders how he already knows his full name. Lai says he not only knows his name, but also the most important thing about him. Then the time appears above him, and the boy sees he has 10 days left to live. He wonders if it's a holographic projection, but it's impossible. After all, he just opened that message. Robert grabs the monitor, asking how this is possible and what kind of business is this with him only having 10 days left. Lai explains that life and death are something that can be altered with a single thought. In this circumstance, he can provide the one thing Robert wants most time. The boy continues gripping the monitor, asking what kind of monster he is. Lai simply smiles, telling him to meet him in 10 days. He was about to say more, but the transmission was cut off. Then a bald guy closes the notebook, stating everything went as planned. However, they would still leave some clues. Lai says it's okay. Despite the boy being the great hacker, he is still human, and in the end, he fears death. The scene shifts to a few days later, and Robert has already arrived in the city. He knows he needs to find Lai as quickly as possible because he doesn't have much time left. He coughs against the wall, and an officer asks if he needs help getting to the hospital. He says he is fine, shows a photo of a mansion, asking how to get there. Meanwhile, inside, Peng Hao explains that only a few days have passed since he was given more time, but his body seems to be weakening again. Lee knows that although he improved Peng Hao's condition, he can't cure the root of the problem. Despite his incredible power, he is still just a human, and his knowledge of biology and medicine is far from sufficient. That's when he has the idea of not thinking of people as beings, but as a collection of cells. He can stop even a raindrop, so perhaps it is possible with his powers. He then stands up and tells Peng Hao to bring him some of his blood. Peng Hao is confused, and Lai explains that he will receive an incredible power. Struggling, Peng Hao says he understands. Looking through the microscope, Lai thinks it would be great if he could alter the lifespan of organs or cells. Questioning if this would be the same as extending a person's life, he observes the cells and sees that each has its own lifespan. He then decides to slow them all down by a factor of 2. This increases their lifespan from 3 hours to 6 hours. This shows he can slow the destruction of defective cells. In this way, he also reduces how much they can reproduce, and perhaps even the body's system can resolve this. Leukemia creates an excess of white blood cells. If he can balance this production and reproduction, he can cure it. Meanwhile, Robert has just arrived in front of the mansion. Curious to see what awaits him, he knocks on the door and Peng Hao opens it, making him fall to the ground. Immediately, he is immobilized and questioned about what he is doing there. Robert explains that he came because of the hack and that he was invited. After a while, he is on the couch. The people are impressed that he can speak Chinese and say it doesn't matter, asking if he is really the time magician. Peng Hao slaps him, telling him to stop doubting their boy. Seeing the two fight, Lai tells Peng Hao to stop and come in front of him. He realizes that his hypothesis is correct and can feel each cell. He then slows the reproduction of the defective cells by 10 times. With this, Peng Hao screams and radiates a golden energy, leaving everyone there frightened. Lai explains exactly what he did, and says that from now on, the rest is up to Peng Hao's immune system. Peng Hao notes that this seems very different from the last time. He turns excitedly, saying he can even feel his strength returning. Lee ignores him and asks Robert what he thinks of this. The boy is impressed, and the next second, he is jumping with joy because he too is cured, saying his body no longer feels any pain. He throws himself at Lai's feet, saying from now on he will offer anything. Lai then asks if he wants to join the club. The boy says yes, he will follow him forever. As soon as he signs the contract, Lai says he has 3 requests. First, to create a database of powerful and talented people, but who have sick family members or are sick themselves. Then, to make a ranking of these people. And lastly, to create a messaging software that will be used to communicate with clients. Robert says he will take care of it, that it will be easy. Back at Mr. Zheng's mansion, the first person Lai saved. The man wonders if Mr. Lai could become immortal. Zheng says his body doesn't lie, he is feeling well. At that moment, a man brings a box saying a boy of about 20 brought it there. Seeing the clock stamped on it, he orders it to be brought in immediately, thinking it must be something from Mr. Lai. Inside, there is only a cell phone, and as soon as he turns it on, a message from the Eternal Club appears. The man then pulls out a paper the boy left with it, explaining about the rankings. Level 1 would require a contribution of 1,000, level 2 10,000, and level 6 100 million contributions. You earn points by using money or doing favors for the president, and a level 6 member can even buy 26 years. The people wondered if this was true, and the old man called a meeting. In it, he informed them that they had received an invitation to join this so-called Eternal Club. People were murmuring, but another person quickly told them to focus because Mr. Lai was very important. However, they were debating whether joining would be too dangerous, until the old man told them to shut up. They would join because the longer they delayed, the worse it would be. With that, the old man clicked on the screen with wide eyes, and everyone was curious. In the chat, there were many people, each with their number, welcoming the old man. One even commented asking how number 02 could type so fast that he was already hundreds of years old. The fools started to fall for the WhatsApp nonsense, talking about how there were really people over 1,000 years old. Obviously, all the messages were being sent by Robert, who was having fun. Old Rong then asked where Mr. 02 came from. Lai was guiding Robert on what to say, and in the chat, people speculated that he was from the Ming dynasty. He told the old man to change his name to 129 as he would soon receive a mission. The poor old man fell for the trick, thinking he was part of a group searching for longevity. In each era, they had a different name, but now it was the Eternal Club. The first mission was to protect the planet, advance technology, and evolve humanity. The fools asked how old the people were. The old man very seriously said that number 45 was at least 100 years old, and that these people had existed for hundreds of dynasties, and they should accumulate an immeasurable amount of finances. He turned to everyone and said they couldn't offend anyone in that club. The men said they understood. The phone rang, startling them, and they received the first mission, which was to secure a gigantic place in the capital with at least 3,000 square meters. The people in the group said the mission was too easy, and number 129 was lucky. And the poor old man, deceived, banged the table, telling them to find such a place immediately. Robert informed Lai that they received a message confirming that they would do it. Lai thanked him but said they couldn't let their guard down yet. Robert said it was okay. No one would discover their location, while Lai was enjoying himself. A few days later, they received tons of places that were available for them. Lai said the places looked good, but for the first club, they weren't good enough. Observing a huge mansion, he said that one wasn't so bad. Robert praised him, and with that, it was chosen. At the front of the mansion, Mr. Rong was waiting. Lai arrived with Peng Hao and Robert, giving their greetings. He said Rong was looking much better, and Rong said it was all thanks to the time given to him. Lai responded that he was being too polite, as it was all just a negotiation. The old man laughed, saying he was the treasure of the family, and a man said he would show them the house. With that, they entered, seeing each of the rooms and finding them extremely luxurious. Robert wanted a room to turn into a computer room, and Lai told Peng Hao to choose a room for training. Lai glanced at Robert, who understood. He sent a message that number 129 had completed the novice mission. The group of old men seemed happy and emotional, while Lai was beaming, saying it was time for a new transaction. Peng Hao would be responsible for security and practical aspects of the place. Robert would take care of virtual security and anything related to the group, while Lai, besides the negotiations, would develop new strategies for the group. The problem was that he wasn't very intelligent either. Despite having received the powers, he was still just a normal guy. He would need to work harder from now on. Back with Mr. Rong, a special mission appeared in the group about recruiting someone from the military who was retired. 118 members tried to take the mission, but it was 129 who got it. Immediately, the old man said he would take the mission and find this retired person. Robert showed the phone, saying the man's bad days were coming. Then Lee appeared and told Robert to get back to work. They needed to recruit new members. He turned to Peng Hao and said his training wouldn't be easy, because he would practice with time passing 100 times faster. Peng Hao replied that it wasn't a problem. He could consider it done. A few days later, a retired ex-officer presented himself. Lee asked if he wanted breakfast, and he said no, he was prepared to work. With that, he introduced Peng Hao, saying he would like him to be trained. The ex-officer smiled, saying it would be a pleasure, and so the training began. They also needed some supercomputers to ensure the security of the place. Only then would Robert show his full potential. Meanwhile, Peng Hao was getting beaten up. It took him only 5 minutes of training to realize it was completely different from a street fight. The trainer asked if that was all he was capable of. Peng Hao got up and jumped towards him, saying not to underestimate him. But soon he was caught in an arm lock and a chin jab. The trainer grabbed his shoulder and struck his stomach. The boy didn't stop, quickly immobilizing his neck. The trainer warned that if he were him, he would give up or he would be beaten for many days. But Peng Hao, having just regained his life, wasn't going to give up. Obviously, hearing this made Lai happy. Everything was going according to plan, and that area was with time accelerated by 100 times. At that moment, he received a call about someone asking if he remembered them. Lai said he did. It was a boy named Baron Zheng from the university. In the next scene, Peng Hao handed him a list of everything the kid had been buying. A bunch of iPhones, gutsy items, and women's cosmetics. He didn't expect the boy to spend all that just to get girlfriend, even building a reputation as an heir at the university. Lai said that what he had given was far from enough, and if that's the case, they would have to meet again. In the cafe, Baron was wondering why he hadn't arrived yet. Was he not going to have another chance? Just then, our boy appeared. Baron got excited, calling him by name. Lai smiled, saying the boy had been living a luxurious life. Awkwardly, Baron told him to sit down. Lai responded that by his clothes he had been spending the money he received very well. Baron was about to say something else, but Lai interrupted. He said that because of his profession, he knew very well why he was there today. Considering he had 64 years of life, Lai asked how many years he wanted to sell. The boy hesitated and asked if he could sell a bit more than a year. Calmly, Lai said that in the second transaction, there were no restrictions. He could sell as many years as he wanted, but he had to be warned that for each year he sold, he would age an extra year, and reminded him that time is long, he still had many opportunities ahead. But Baron said his girlfriend would think it was cool if he had a good car, and if they could travel together. He wanted her to accept his marriage proposal and take her to see the world. If he got 64 years, maybe he could sell 4 or no, 5, deciding he wanted to sell 5 more years. And after that, he would never sell anything again. Lai told him to calm down because he was just there to negotiate. If he wanted to sell, he wanted to buy. He made the contract and said it would be 5 years in exchange for 1.5 million in cash. Is that what he wanted? The boy said yes, that was exactly it. A while later, 1.5 million was in his account. He had already spent it all anyway. The boy was in disbelief, saying it was insane. Outside, he said he wouldn't say goodbye because he wouldn't call Lee again. And with that, he left. But Lai said he would wait for him until next time. With that, he called Robert and asked how the database was going. The boy replied that he had information about a very good client, an old man about to expire named Song Sixon. Knowing he was 97 years old, Lai smiled, saying he would be next. The Song family was famous in the entertainment industry. They had been dominating much of China for hundreds of generations. The Tang Hen studio they managed was always #1 there, and they had several top-ranked celebrities. Lai saw all this in the news on TV, which also talked about the wedding of someone close to this man. Yang seemed interested, thinking this wedding would be very extravagant, while Lai knew the money he received from Rong was about to run out. So it was time for him to make the next move. Robert explained that the man's family believed in revivification, which was basically when someone was about to die. If someone was born or married, a person would live a few more years. Our boy laughed, thinking that even the rich believe in that, while Yang continued talking about how amazing it would be to look at such a place. He stretched, saying if she wanted to see it so much, he would take her when it happened. She jumped and hugged him, saying she loved him so much, while Lai thought she loved money too much, commenting that it was her only flaw. But this wedding might be a good opportunity for him to see Mr. Song's recital too. At the entrance of the capital on the day of the wedding, the red carpet was rolled out for the press and Yang didn't know what they were doing there. Various artists from the entire industry are being photographed and Yang recognizes each one of them. Clinging to Li, she asks if they will really be able to get in there. He tells her no, they will actually enter through the VIP route. At that moment, one of Rong's employees stops the car and tells him to get in, saying he was there to pick him up. The man even introduces his daughter, who says it's a pleasure to meet the enigmatic Mr. Lai. However, she keeps glancing at Yang. Li pulls Yang by the waist and introduces her as his companion. The man says nothing and tells them to get in the car. She feels a bit embarrassed, but he assures her that no one will look down on her there. Yang is confused, not knowing what kind of person he really is. As the cars approach, even the photographer Vegeta is there on the right. The people come to receive them, thinking it is Mr. Rong, but it is our boy. No one there knows Mr. Lu Lai and they want to know which family he comes from. He extends his hand to the boy, saying he looks a lot like his father when he was younger. The man asks if he knows his father. Lai says no, he just did some research before coming to that place. However, the security guard behind him already suspects he is there because of the elder song. Walking on the red carpet, Yang is impressed, wondering if this is high society. She stumbles nervously and he catches her, telling her to calm down. There's no reason to be anxious in this place. She asks how many such events he has attended to be so calm. Lai thinks it's his first time in a place like this, but compared to the power he has, everything here is irrelevant. He asks the man next to him to delete his photo and all the reporters' photos. The man says he understands and assures him it's done. In the wedding hall, the bride is announced. Yang is amazed, saying she looks incredible. The woman looks identical to a princess. While Lai enjoys seeing all this luxury, it only means there is a lot of money to be made here. The man then begins to help Mr. Song up to give his speech. Struggling, he tries to take the microphone, while everyone's anxious. He starts saying some words of encouragement, but stops midway and begins to cough. Lai gets up, and the security guard asks where he's going. Seeing him take his hand out of his pocket, he knows what's going to happen. Everyone's time is stopped except for Mr. Song and the man beside him. Lee approaches, saying the man is 97 years old. The old man asks who he is. Lai says that compared to him, he is nothing more than a leaf in the wind, but he is the person who can save him. Song has 1 day and 20 minutes left. Seeing that time, he asks if Lai is the god of death. Lai says no. He is a time vendor, but he can be called Mr. Lu. Obviously, the only product he deals with is lifespan. Song seems incredulous at what he's hearing, and Lai says that with him, unlike the saying, a mountain of gold can buy an instant. The man throws himself in front of Mr. Song, who tells him to calm down, and asks what the price of such time is. Lai says a person's days are different, so he charges 1/5 of what the person generates in a year. The old man hesitates, and Lai says he doesn't need to decide now and can keep the card. But you should remember that he doesn't have much time. When they turn to say something, Lai disappears. And Song comments about the other old man from the wrong family who was about to die, but suddenly got better. His son says he heard about that news too. Thinking about how much the wrong family seemed to respect that boy, he would have to at least call them. Meanwhile, at the party, Yang was taking pictures with all the famous actors. She was very happy, while they didn't seem to be enjoying it. Suddenly, something caught her attention. An actress named Zhao Manji. She turned to try to ask for an autograph, but ended up stumbling and calling out the woman's name. As she looked up, she was hit in the face with a drink. Zhao Manji asked where that working-class daughter of a mother came from. People were in disbelief. On the floor, Yang tried to apologize, but seeing the woman's face, she knew she was in trouble. She stood up, saying she would help the actress up, but the woman slapped her, telling her to get her dirty hands off. The people there started talking badly about both of them. This made Manji even angrier. She sees a guy next to her who says the girl already apologized, so she should let it go. However, she grabs his drink and throws it on Yang, who was on the floor, saying that if apologies solved problems, there would be no need for the police. The woman was furious for being humiliated by that girl who was dressed in rags. She needed to be punished to learn who she was dealing with. She slapped Yang hard across the face, sending her flying to the ground. Lying on the asphalt, Yang wondered if this was the high society she always wanted to reach. The woman grabbed her by the chin and said the world is like this. If she didn't beat her today, tomorrow everyone would call her weak. Yang didn't know how to respond until someone ordered her to let go. It was Lai who repeated it again. Manji asked where this rat came from. Then Song appeared next to him and said he invited him and that Zhao had a very bad temper. The woman was in disbelief because the elder was protecting that boy. She pointed at Yang and said it was her fault. But old Song apologized to Mr. Lei and said his family had made a big mistake. Manji couldn't understand why the elder, who was about to die, was bowing to this boy. When the old man glared at her, she realized she had messed up. She had no idea who the boy was, but for the old man to bow, he must be some sort of secret VIP. Song then ordered her to apologize. She knew that going against the Song family would ruin her future. Seeing Yang running to the protagonist, she had no idea who they were. A stare from him made her crouch, apologizing to Mr. Lai. Song said it wasn't sincere enough. She apologized again, saying she made a mistake. The old man shouted it wasn't enough. She kept apologizing and the old man didn't accept it, until she realized she had to be more sincere and slapped herself, saying she was wrong and begging Mr. Lu for forgiveness. The son approached the father and said that was enough. It was Mr. Zuan's wedding, but Song replied that the one who decided if it was enough was Mr. Lu. Sometime later, the actress was on the ground beaten. Lai put his coat on Yang and said that was enough. He approached Manji and said that when he saw her on TV, she was usually more elegant, and he left saying that out of respect for the Song family, he wouldn't ruin the mood of the place. Song wanted him to wait, but the two left. At that moment, the old man ordered the wrong family to be called, while the son just watched the actress lying on the ground. He warned her that there were consequences that neither he nor she could withstand, but it was best for her to leave for now and reflect on what she did. Moreover, it was best not to try anything against that person, or the consequences would be disastrous. However, the actress thought that she was already finished anyway, so she didn't care about the consequences. In the taxi, Yang apologized for the trouble she caused. Lai told her to stop admiring those celebrities, because they relied only on appearance and sacrificed dignity for a bit of relevance. They weren't to be envied, much less feared. With that, they returned home. Someone caught their attention. It was a new, dangerously beautiful neighbor trying to carry some boxes. Yan explained the woman's story, saying she married a man her father forced her to, but the man was already about to die, and now she is a widow. Lai decided to help the woman and told Yang to go home. She was struggling and trying hard to lift the box. When she looked back, Lai said he would help her. The woman felt awkward and thanked him, introducing herself as Yu Suking. He already lifted the boxes, and she commented that her husband's health wasn't good. With no one else at home, she had to do these things alone. Not sure if the woman was trying to seduce Lai, but he was more interested in her 50 years of life. He thought it was sad that she would have to live so long as a widow. At the front of her house, she thanked him again and invited him in for tea. But there were some coughs inside, and he said he wouldn't disturb her. She apologized and he left, thinking it was a shame she had 50 years but would live them in solitude. He then received a message and thought it was quicker than he expected. Of course, it was the Song family wanting to accept the negotiation. A few days later, their neighbor Xuking was walking around, a danger to society. She saw Mr. Liu and greeted him, saying his clothes were very formal and asking if he was going to work. A sly Lai mounted his bike, saying he was just going for a small negotiation. She laughed, thinking he was interesting. Sometime later, Mr. Song arrived at the Eternal Clubhouse. The son said it was dangerous and asked if it wouldn't be better to send someone to check it out first. However, Song said that if the wrong family confirmed there was no danger. As he was about to approach, Peng Hao appeared and said that Mr. Liu was waiting. The son rushed to help the old man. Peng Hao stopped the others, saying that the bodyguard couldn't enter. The bodyguard was impressed by the young man's strength. Everyone stared, and Peng Hao explained that it was the rule there. Song said it was fine, he just wanted to know the directions. Inside, the son said it was unbelievable that Mr. Liu really owned the place. Peng Hao warned them not to doubt his abilities and that doing business with him was not for everyone. They then saw Mr. Liu in front of the window. The old man apologized for taking so long. Our boy responded that, strictly speaking, he wasn't late. He just wanted to know if they would pay the price. They agreed, saying yes. Then he said the transaction would begin. The old man looked up and saw a bunch of clocks, wondering if all of them were timed. To him, Mr. Liu was someone who walked the infinite sea. The old man told them to hand over what they had brought. With that, they handed over the envelope, saying they wanted to buy a year for his father. Liu said that considering everything Peng Hao did, they should pay around 240 million, and they responded they had no objections. Our boy asked if they knew how things worked there. That was the contract to buy time. As soon as he signed it, he would receive it. Mr. Song hesitantly wrote his name. Immediately, he felt something in his heart and radiated energy. Seeing the old man fall to the ground, they asked what happened. Suddenly, the old man opened his eyes, and Liu said the transaction was complete. The old man couldn't believe that the chest pains he had been feeling had disappeared. To the son, the person in front of them was some kind of god. Our seller then told him to enjoy the life he had, that he wouldn't leave them out. Peng Hao immediately called them to leave. They just looked and left. Outside, the son asked the father if he really felt recovered. The father replied that he never imagined that at his age he would discover that magic existed in this world. It was hard to believe, but the energy he was feeling wasn't a lie. And he ordered the money to be transferred to Mr. Liu as soon as possible. In the office, the protagonist asked if the guys had left and Peng Hao confirmed. Now with the money they received, they could relax a bit. Liu then asked how Peng Hao's training was going. Hesitantly, he replied that he still couldn't beat the instructor, and apologized for his incompetence. Lai was impressed by his determination. Even with 100x acceleration, he had been beaten for almost a year in that place, and the changes in his body were visible to the naked eye. Lai put a hand on his shoulder and told him to relax. The guy who was training him had a lifetime to learn, and he was already progressing well. Peng Hao was moved, seeing that Lai treated him as a friend. Our boy said that before he returned to training, they would see what Robert was doing, who was obviously watching soap operas instead of working. Embarrassed, he asked when they had arrived, and the boss wanted to know why he wasn't working. Lai scratched his nose, saying that in fact he didn't need to anymore. The work was almost complete. They had collected data from almost half the world to get that information. The design was terrible, but the important thing was that it worked. And he implemented something on the phone that if a person failed 3 times to authenticate, everything would be deleted. Lai thanked him, saying it was a great job. Robert told him to sit and look at everything they had. Lee agreed and searched for a genius designer. Several names appeared. He was impressed. The data that appeared were obviously about people who needed time, and he soon saw a famous designer who had a tumor. She was 28 years old but had practically been given up for dead. Stretching in the chair, he thought he would have to make some deals with her. At a hospital, Tam Yanyu was reciting a poem while weaving something. Even the old folks there were telling her to shut up with those sad stories, until someone in the room said it was sad for a young woman to be diagnosed with a terminal illness. The watch fell from her pocket and time stopped. He approached, saying he was looking for her, and introduced himself as the owner of the Eternal Club and Mr. Liu. He was there to invite her. Time appeared above her head, showing 3 months of life. She found the idea of longevity and the Eternal Club strange, but immediately told him to forget about it. Lei asked if she didn't believe him, and she said she did. It's just that death is a part of life, and this terminal illness made her see the superficiality of things. In a way, continuing to live is insignificant. All she wanted was to finish that last piece. If that were possible, then she would be grateful. Lai was impressed by how dedicated she was to her art. He said that since death didn't scare her, they would have to change the method. She looked confused and he said to watch this, a chance for her to rethink if she wanted to live. He then slowed all the destructive cells by 15 times. After the rune glowed, he asked if she found that impressive. Breathing heavily, she asked what happened. He also sped up her hair cells, causing it all to grow back. Lai welcomed her back. She cried, saying it was impossible. She asked for it not to be a dream, afraid of waking up in bed again. Our boy replied that she had incredible talent for design. However, the more beautiful she was, the better she could express herself. She explained that she'd agreed. As she deteriorated, her work also lost its warmth. Many times, she wished to have died quickly so people would remember her and her work as beautiful things. She bowed, thanking him, saying she would do anything. Lai then asked if she would consider the invitation, and she said yes, she wanted to join the Eternal Club. Back at the mansion, the third employee was already hired. Her responsibility was to take care of the public image of the Eternal Club. She went to Lai and said she had created a new interface for the app, and he said she adapted very well. Seeing it on the screen, he said it was exactly what he had in mind. He asked what Robert thought, and he said it didn't matter since he was the boss. Lai then called Peng Hao and told him to take that phone to the Song family. Now that place would have 2 official members. He had no idea how these 2 giant families would compete for club points. With that, the system announced that number 130 had joined the club, and the fake voices began to say that it seemed the boss was calling a lot of people, asking if he was trying to change the world once again, while Lai was wondering what kind of mission he would give to the family. Just then, he received a call from someone named Liu Yang. He found it strange that this guy was calling him and answered, asking what the problem was. Liu Yang asked if he had offended the wrong person. Li asked why he was saying that. He informed him that some scary people had shown up at his old workplace today. They beat everyone and somehow got his information from HR. He called to warn him that whoever he offended, he should be careful. Liu asked if the protagonist was doing anything illegal. He responded that everything he was doing was legal and Liu didn't need to worry, but he didn't expect this kind of situation. Liu thanked him and hung up the phone, knowing well that the transactions were voluntary. With the contract, they couldn't go against it. Then he remembered that arrogant actress. Maybe he had overlooked something. He went to Robert and told him he had a job for him, and told him to find out who was digging for information about him. In another company, a man handed a report to the boss, who asked the woman what they had said. It was the actress from before who said the Song family told them not to go after that person. Looking at Lu Li's history, she wondered why that family was protecting such a common person, and that perhaps the old elder of the Song family had gone crazy with age. Manji said they were trying to humiliate her by making her embarrassed. The fat man told her to be quiet. Getting involved with the Song family carelessly would be dangerous. He ordered the man to investigate their relationship with the Song family, while the actress said he would have to pay for what he did. What they didn't know was that the camera was watching everything because Robert had already hacked it. Now Lai knew exactly who was trying to cause trouble, a guy named Zhao Hanyang who owned some industries and real estate. Today, everyone knew he was supporting Zhao Manzi, but he had many other actresses and mistresses. Robert then found out more information. It seemed this guy started many buildings, took people's money, and disappeared. Not to mention that his son was a drunk who always got into trouble. Plus, he got a house demolished with 2 elderly people inside, and they died. Man, the guy even threatened a woman from the university. This guy has a long list. Our boy said that was more than enough to know if he wasn't a good person. He wanted to know what he was capable of. Considering he did all that and wasn't arrested, clearly he was above the law. He approached the training field where Peng Hao was still getting beaten. He lunged at the trainer, dodging to the left, noticing the boy was getting faster, but it still wasn't enough. But Peng Hao grabbed his neck and threw him back. The trainer was thrown but managed to land on his feet. Peng Hao realized he still couldn't win. But the trainer said he was getting creative and improving. He just needed to ensure the opponent had no chance to recover. Li appeared clapping, saying he was improving a lot. The trainer asked if there was a problem or something he needed, and Lai explained that he would need Peng Hao for a few days. Outside the mansion, he said the boy was evolving a lot. Peng Hao said yes, but he kept losing. The instructor was too strong. Lai said it didn't matter, the time had come. He had a mission. Peng Hao was happy and said to just tell him what he needed to do. Lai then told him that the first mission was to leave a like. Do you remember that the last chapter ended when Lai told Peng Hao that he was finally going to receive his first mission? And the mission wasn't to like a video. It was to kill someone. Peng Hao fell silent and Lai, unsure of what to say, asked if he really had to kill someone. Lai told him not to worry as he would be going with him this time. Peng Hao didn't respond, so Lai called his name and somewhat hesitantly, he said yes, he understood. Suddenly, he felt a rush of anxiety, and with that, Lai just left, telling him to get ready. Peng Hao said he understood and that he would prepare immediately. He left and Lai realized that Peng Hao wasn't as calm and resolute as he had thought. But perhaps that was expected as it was probably the first time he was going to kill someone. The problem was that if he couldn't overcome this psychological barrier, his value would decrease significantly, and all the efforts until now would be wasted. A stone came flying and Peng Hao reacted by catching it midair. It was his trainer who asked if he was ready for another round. Peng Hao didn't say anything and just stared, and the trainer noticed he was determined, saying he would attack first then. Now was the boss who was scared. Why was that kid so bloodthirsty? Peng Hao kept thinking about Lei's words, hoping he would keep a calm heart and do what was necessary. While taking a shower, he knew he had been preparing all these days for this day. The reason he's still alive and has a healthy body is all thanks to Mr. Lai. And now he has the sword that he needs. If that's the case, wherever he is pointed, he will go there to kill. Now motivated, he said if this mission is the reason he lives, he went to the room, pulled out a suitcase from under the bed, an apple peeler, and said that dagger would be enough. Looking at the family portrait, he told them not to worry, that he would continue living. Lai, looking stylish under the moonlight, welcomed Peng Hao, who said he was ready. Our boy smiled, saying now he seemed motivated, and he responded that yes, he was feeling great. In a bar, Lai said this was the first special mission. He would speed up his time by 100 times, which meant no matter who was there, they wouldn't be able to stop him. However, he warned that the target had 2 bodyguards who were always with him, so he needed to be careful. Peng Hao smiled and said that no one on that list would leave alive. Lai then said the guy's mansion was at the end of the street and he would wait here. Motivated, Peng Hao responded that the guy could already be considered dead. Our boy smiled and said it had all begun. He accelerated his time and started running with everything around him frozen. Gazing at the moon, he said it was beautiful tonight. It was just a pity that Zhu Hanyang wouldn't see it anymore. At the mansion, the guards were chatting distractedly when they heard a sound. They turned around, but it was nothing but the wind. They found it strange and decided to check it out. However, one said it wasn't necessary. They had a dog on watch, and if anything happened, they would know. After all, that dog had already killed several people who stepped on that ground. Its eyes turned red as it sensed something approaching. The next second, Peng Hao had already stabbed it, pulled out, and was running again. As he ran with time sped up, he realized it felt like magic. Killing people didn't take a second. Inside the mansion, one guy asked for a cigarette and the other tossed him the pack. His friend didn't respond and he asked what was wrong. Suddenly, Peng Hao's face appeared. The guy was startled and the next second, he was stabbed in the neck. The other one fell to the ground, seeing it, and at the same moment, Peng Hao appeared and finished him off too. In the corridor, there was just a trail of red paint. The bedroom door slowly opened where the fat guy was sleeping. Peng Hao had a psychopathic look, saying it was the last one's turn. The next second, he was already gathering documents and covering the bodies. He always had pictures of the actresses who worked for him so he could blackmail them. Peng Hao was sure that killing this guy was the right thing to do. In fact, this death was even easy for him. Leaving the room, he says he hopes to see him in hell. Lai is still at the cafe, waiting calmly. When Peng Hao approaches, he throws the suitcase on the table, saying the mission is complete. He finished everyone off and collected all the necessary material. Lai smiles, saying it was a great job, and asks how it feels to take a life. Peng Hao replies that he feels fine, but his trembling hand clearly indicates otherwise. However, our boy knows that he still needs to process those emotions. He tells Peng Hao that he doesn't need to be swayed by these people. They had committed many crimes, so they deserved this end. The true interpretation is that it was actually a service to society. Man, he's like Light Yagami 2.0. He asks if Peng Hao understands, who seems not to respond. Lai then stands up and tells him to relax a bit and go rest. He will receive a good reward. Staring at the suitcase, Peng Hao knows. For the people who were under this guy's threats, this death wasn't a bad thing. A few days later, back at the club, the trainer was practicing when Peng Hao appeared and said he wanted another training session. The guy smiles, asking if he missed getting beaten up. Peng Hao replied that he was just afraid of getting rusty. With that, he stared and they prepared. The next second, the trainer took a punch to the jaw that sent him flying. The trainer had no idea how this kid had gotten so strong. Not only was he much calmer, but his strikes had no hesitation anymore. On the bench sometime later, the trainer admits that this time he really lost. He says he has never known anyone who improves so quickly. Peng Hao says it's no big deal. It's just that he's been training hard. However, the trainer is sure he experienced something recently. He asks what the sensation was like the first time. Well, usually that question isn't used in this context. But Peng Hao knows the feeling well and says that some questions are better left unanswered. The guy is confused and says he was asking about the first sensation of defeating the trainer. Seeing no response, he says that next time he won't win so easily. Meanwhile, at the fat guy's mansion, a secretary approaches and wow, that skirt is very tight, barely holding together. She's angry because no one is answering and they haven't shown up at the office yet. She walks in, saying she needs some signatures, but no one responds. She then walks down the corridor and sees a leg lying there. As she approaches to see what it is, she finds one of Peng Hao's victims. She falls back in shock and screams for help. Sometime later, the police are there taking photos of everyone. Peng Hao not only killed the fat guy, but also the actress who had beaten Young. The investigators comment that whoever did this is one of the best professionals they've ever seen. Everyone seemed to have died without being able to react and almost simultaneously. One guy is scared and asks how it's possible for everyone to die at the same time. Between the dog and this place, there are more than 100 meters. It's impossible for them to have died in the same minute. The guy asks to see the cameras, but the officer warns that all were taken by the Zhao family. The policeman trembles, thinking that if that's the case, it's out of their hands. He then warns not to let anyone approach the scene and says he will have to speak to the top brass. Back at the mansion, Robert informs that the guy's family took the cameras and asks if it's a problem. Lai says no, as many people wanted revenge on this guy, not to mention they are not alone. Robert says he understands and will handle it. Meanwhile, at Mr. Rong Yiu's mansion, the guys are talking about the incident at the wedding that day, where Zhao Manji slapped Mr. Lei's companion, and then she was also humiliated. Knowing the kind of woman Manzi is, they wonder if she tried some revenge, and if this recent incident involves Mr. Lai. One of them says she might have sought revenge with Zhao Huanyang, and that was the fate they met. Mr. Rong then questions why Mr. Lai seems to let them know these things. The most important thing is that other families might end up discovering his abilities, and then the Rong family loses all the advantage they have. With that, they all come to the same conclusion. They need to help suppress any information about this incident. He signals one of the standing guards, who nods in understanding. The phone there was capturing the whole conversation, and Robert is impressed. Lai explains that he doesn't need to do anything since, for their own benefit, those guys will prevent any information from leaking, and he just needs to stand there reaping the benefits. Back at the house, the guys wonder why the investigations are so slow. It's the brother of the guy who was killed who wants to know more about what happened. A blonde guy says they recovered the footage from that place. President Zhao tells him to shut up and just show it. The guy responds that alright, but things are weird. He plays the footage and tells them to pay attention. A dog is standing there. The next second, it spins and falls dead. The man drops his tea and asks what the hell was that? How did the dog die? The blonde guy says he has no idea. You can't even see the shadow of whoever killed it. The only way to see something is to slow the footage down by 10 times. That way, for a millisecond, you can see a shadow passing by. The guy explains that's the limit of how much they can slow down the footage, but whoever did this was moving even faster. You could say the assassin exists in a completely different time plane. The president is left speechless, wondering who his brother had offended. He then asks the secretary if she knows who his brother had problems with. She awkwardly says that actually the last problem he had was because of his mistress, Zhao Manji. The president grits his teeth, saying he knew that woman was just trouble. After some time, he gets up, asking if it's possible that the elder Song, who was about to die, was bowing to a kid. The secretary says yes, and they even warned her not to seek revenge. The man gets even angrier, saying if President Song had warned, she should have just left it alone. But he finds it strange why someone who's about to die would worry about such a thing. He then asked about the relationship of the boy who was invited with the wrong family. The secretary says he appeared out of nowhere, and no one knew about him before this incident. The blonde guy then hands over some research showing that the Wrong family and the Song family seem to be working together lately. The president asks about the health of the guy from the Wrong family. The guy says he was almost dying since he's 98 years old. But suddenly, his health seems to have improved. Seeing the picture of the two, the man gets worried. Two old men who were about to die place extreme importance on this boy. Should he really mess with someone like that? The people seem apprehensive. After thinking for a bit, he says it ends here. The order is for no one to ask or research about this incident anymore. The secretary, scared, asks why he's saying that. He retorts, questioning if he had made things clear. He doesn't want anyone asking about this or any information leaving this room. If not, those two there won't be spared. The guys don't say anything, but the president knows very well. If two giant families like those can't do anything against this guy, all he can do is pretend he knows nothing until he has a way to deal with it. If not, their group in the main city will be affected. For now, they will have to accept this loss. At the club, Robert is excited since the Wrong family will help handle all of this. In the face of an unknown power, even the most powerful hesitate for a second. Now he's motivated, saying working with Mr. Lai is very interesting. Suddenly, he gets a notification that's a moan from a girl saying it's very good. His system that detects good people for Mr. Lai to negotiate with has found a perfect target. Even Robert is trembling, saying they found a pot of gold. The guy's name is Tang Jiarui, and he's 102 years old. This one really needs to turn back time. A guy so famous in the field of biology that his studies appear in school textbooks. He runs to tell Lai, who seems interested. Someone who contributed so much to biology studies in this country that you could say anyone in this field is basically his disciple. He smiles, saying there aren't two like this guy, and tells him to prepare the details because he will have to make a personal visit. Sometime later at the hospital, he asks a doctor if she knows the room where Professor Tang Jiaorui is. She asks if he's one of the students, seeing that the boy is very young. She then points and says all of his classmates are there too. There, the students comment that any problem of Xiaoru's is also their problem. The woman thanks while the guys leave because it seems he's not open for visits today. Something then catches her attention and she asks Lai if he's there to visit the old man. Apologizing, she explains that his condition is so bad that he can't receive visitors. Armoy says that's fine then. He'll just observe him from here. Upon observing, he sees that the man has a day and 2 hours left to live. Armoy knows that someone like him shouldn't have such a sad end. not just for the club, but for the development of humanity. The problem is that he doesn't know how this guy will react upon seeing him. At 3 in the morning, he opens his eyes and sees his granddaughter sleeping on his lap. Of everything he's done, the only thing he doesn't want to lose is her along with the students he's taught. The girl responds that he is the greatest pride of her life, and he says all he wanted was to see her start her own family. It's just a pity that he doesn't have more time. Suddenly, someone calls his name in the room. It's Lai, sitting by the window, saying he could say that when she's awake. From his point of view, the old man still has plenty of time to live. Sweating, the old man asks who he is. Lai then explains everything, and the old man questions this business of being a time seller. Lai simply explains the club's missions: to protect the Earth, improve technology, and advance humanity. And he is here today because he was detected as a person with a level 10 talent. That's why he was invited to the club, to be able to use his talent. The old man hesitates and says he will join with one condition. He will never do anything against the people or the country. If not, he prefers to die. Lai says he accepts this condition. The next scene talks about the saying, "Good people die young, but villains live for 1,000 years." But seeing Tang Xiaowai receiving time, he says he doesn't believe in that saying. The old man, sweating, says it feels like he has received a lot of vitality. Lai explains that for now, he only returned the old man to when he was 99 years old. That's because if he did much more, people would start to find it strange. The old man then says he will prepare his will and join the Eternal Club under a new identity. Lai smiles, saying that this is the best path, and he leaves, saying he trusts Zhou's knowledge to make the best decision. At that moment, the old man asks him to wait a second, and tells him not to forget the promise he made. Lai responds that he's overthinking it. He too is a patriot. A while later, his granddaughter wakes up calling from her grandfather. But strangely, he's there by the window, very much alive. She gets excited, asking if he's recovered, and runs to hug him. He says it's nothing. He just wanted to see the sunrise one more time. However, he tells her that unfortunately, he doesn't have much time. She asks how that's possible he's clearly recovered. But seeing the old man's tranquility, she goes into shock. That might be the so-called terminal lucidity. Sometime later, a lot of people gather around the old man. He announces that when he dies, a small part of his inheritance will be divided among his children. However, the rest will all be donated to the Research Foundation. He emphasizes that children like Fang Fang are the future of this world. No one should use their positions to suppress the potential she has. One of them falls to the ground, saying the old man still has hope. The project he's working on will save the old man's life. The old man tells him to stop being reckless, especially since his project is barely initiated. However, the son cries, saying he doesn't want him to go. Tang Xiaorui puts a hand on his head and apologizes, saying he failed as a father. He spent his whole life focusing on research, but now he sees that they were his greatest contribution to this world, and now it's time for him to rest. He then tells Boyuan that he has something he wants to entrust to him. He asks everyone in the room to leave. With that, Boyuan asks what he wants to know. The old man then reveals he wants him to create a false death certificate. Shocked, Boyuan asks what he is talking about. The old man tells him not to ask. Just take it to his hometown because someone is waiting for him there. And from today on, no matter who asks, you should say he was already cremated. Boyuan still doesn't understand. The old man simply says there are existences that are impossible to explain with words. He instructs him that when he leaves that door, he should forget everything they talked about here. With that, Boyuan says he understands. You will do everything the old man asked, explaining that you will continue to observe everything they do in the future, but not from the heavens, and definitely not from hell either. Our boy is just smiling. The phone rings and a person says they got his number from Dahai, that taxi guy from the beginning. Lee asks if they know that money doesn't come for free. On the phone in the city, the woman says she knows very well. She is willing to pay the price for her son. Sometime later, she approaches a place, saying it's right there. Lai is sitting on a bench, wondering if that's the woman Shen Yuping. He calls out to her, and she introduces herself, apologizing for taking so long. She explains that she's out of options because her son wants to study in other countries. Lee takes a look at her time, 18 years and 7 months. Lai tells her to sit down and says they can order something to drink. Hesitating, she says she heard about Dahai. He interrupts her and says it's better for her to see for herself. With that, he speeds up time by 100 times and everyone in the cafes pause. Lai says she must know the rules and asks how many years she wants to sell. The woman is paralyzed, remembering that Dahai had been asking for money and the next day saved his father. She then says that her son is currently studying at Xanda College in the capital and recently received an offer to study abroad, but it's a bit expensive. Even if she sells her blood, she can't make it, but she doesn't want to hinder her son. Lai is thoughtful. He knows that university is neither the hardest nor the most prestigious. But the woman suddenly asks how much her life is worth. Lai says that's for her to define. It depends on how much she still wants to live. Seeing the 18 years, she asks if that's all she has. Lai tells her it's better to think carefully and remember they're talking about her time on this planet. Chen Yuping thinks that 18 years is too much time. She doesn't want her son to have a pathetic life like hers, and it would be enough to see him start a family. With that, she says she's thought it over and knows how much she wants to sell. In the next scene, she's already thanking him, saying that Kai Kai will definitely be very happy. Watching her leave, Lai thinks that 10 years must have been the biggest sacrifice this woman has ever made for her son's future. The scene shifts to her son asking why she came to see him in her work clothes. She laughs, saying she ran just to bring him the money. She transfers $500,000 and tells him not to miss the opportunity because she will be helping him constantly from now on. The boy says yes and smiles when he receives the money. He tells her not to worry and that he will take good care of her and buy anything she wants in the future. She starts crying, saying the important thing is for him to be happy, when suddenly he approaches and tells her to stop crying or everyone will start teasing him. The mother responds that she understands and says she won't bother him with his studies anymore, so she'll return to work. She leaves, telling him to study and tells her to take care of her health. After feeling relieved, he smiles. He calls his friends and says they're going to throw a party tonight and he's footing the bill. Lai is behind a tree, thinking it's a shame a mother like that has a son like him. Maybe he should teach the boy a lesson. However, it has nothing to do with him. He's just a seller conducting fair negotiations. The scene shifts to a saying, "Even the leaves of a 1,000-meter tree still fall near its roots." This means that even people who go very far still want to rest close to where they came from. At Zoru's house, everyone gathers to say goodbye to the grandfather. Lai extended his life by 3 years. However, he will have to cut ties with everyone from his previous life. At the door, Fang says she knows they want to talk to him, but he needs rest. Inside the house, Zoru observes a photo of himself and his wife when they were younger. He says she looks so young while he's become an old man with gray hair. Apparently, people were right when they said she was too good for him. His son watches as he approaches the picture and tells her to wait a little longer. Of course, he murmurs that the time hasn't come yet. Zoru then tells his son Lai to talk to the guests as he wants to walk alone. His son says that's fine and goes to tell Fang to bring his medicine. When alone in the room, the old man thinks it's unbelievable what happened at the hospital. Maybe it was a dream. Until Lee appears and says he's there to complete the contract, asking if he's ready. The old man says he's been ready for this since the day he returned to this country. And with that, it's time to start. Sometime later, Fang comes to bring the medicine. But she finds nothing but the old man's cane. She starts screaming, asking where her grandfather is and where he went. In the field, servant number 4 is there. People are walking around shouting for their father. Zoru just turns around while his son is crying. The perfect scientist who had reached the peak of learning capacity. In terms of skills in his field, he was unmatched. He would be the person to start accumulating knowledge about the Eternals, and the head of the biochemistry department within the Eternal Club. As Lee approaches, he says Zoru is doing very well, while thinking that the 10 years sacrificed by that sad mother were indeed effective. Zoru says he wants to take a look at his world, and Lai says that's fine. It will be a pleasure and welcomes him to the Eternal Club. At the club, Lai says that creating a biochemistry department will cost a lot of money. Zoru explains that humanity's evolution can be divided into 4 parts. However, it has been thousands of years since the body evolved beyond the accumulated knowledge. The project he wants to create for life form engineering will be the key to the next evolution. In a document, he shows that he will need a P2 level laboratory, several assistants, and a lot of things in the files, besides 10 million funds just as initial investment. Lee knows that fits perfectly with the third objective of the Eternal Club, and tells the old man that they will indeed invest in this new life form program as he wants. At that moment, someone calls them. It's Pang Hao's trainer, saying he wants to talk to Mr. Lai. Lai tells Zoru to send him what he needs. Besides, he can also look for anyone he needs to help. The old man thanks him and walks away happily singing. However, the trainer seems to notice something. Lee asks what it is, and the trainer replies that Pang Hao's training is almost complete. All that's missing is practical experience. Lee keeps looking, and Zexer says he wants to work with Lai, explaining that he has no idea what they do there. But he is sure that the boy is not ordinary. Our seller analyzes. The guy is extremely prepared and from the special forces. Not to mention that with him here, Pang Hao will progress faster. Besides, there are several scientists they want to recruit. With that, he says that's fine. He hands over 2 envelopes and tells him to investigate these people. That will be a test. The guy sees that the information is about Yuping and Dahai, the mother and the taxi driver. It shows that the mother has already sold 10 years and Dahai 8. Zexer is shocked. If that were true, it really is an extraordinary organization. He looks at our boy, asking himself if it's him and revealing his true colors. Then he says that it's done. Staying him leave, Lee knows they will need more and more talented people. That's why he created some new contracts where people don't receive time, only money and perks. Of course, they want to obtain the most valuable resource. They will have to think of other ways to receive it. In Country X, in a research area, a man shouts that he won't repeat himself. The decisions have already been made by the superiors, so they just need to obey. A man with glasses is standing in the corner, observing while the others say that anyone who doesn't want to obey can just go home. The man notices that everyone there says nothing, like a bunch of monkeys following orders. Then his phone rings and he receives an invitation from a talent agency. He wonders what kind of laboratory it is that he's never heard of. But he gets interested when he sees there are various questions to join the place he was invited to. He realizes the questions are extremely advanced and can only be asked by someone at the top of their field. With that, he leaves excitedly, saying he's eager to visit this person. In front of a laboratory known as Sky's Age Biology, he says that must be the place. He hears someone talking and looks back. A woman asks if this is a newly established company. The guy next to her runs up, asking if she is Professor Yan Guan. A bit embarrassed, she asks if they've met before, while the guy in front is shocked that even a person like her is there. Then someone asks if everyone has been waiting long. It's Lai, who welcomes them to Sky's Age Biology and tells them to follow him. He will take everyone to meet today's interviewer. In the meeting room, the man observes the two. Yan Guan is a famous writer for the biology journal, and the guy known as Kyu Han has 3 extremely respected articles. The old man knows that to attract people of this caliber, the place is not ordinary. Then the door opens and he says he will introduce everyone. It's Lai who introduces the man as the head of the laboratory, Mr. Tang Lai. The woman recognizes that he has the same last name as the famous doctor. But the man in the back stands up, saying he's never heard of him and asks what he has done. Tang Zhaorui, now known as Tang Li, says the man must be Professor Xu Wan, and says he won't talk about reputation, but rather about the questions and answers given in the test. At that moment, Xu Wan realizes he is questioning someone who had answers he had no idea about. With that, he apologizes for being impulsive. Lai warns that Mr. Tang is not someone to judge by conventional means, and talents like him will receive a 7-figure salary annually. The guys tremble, never having heard of such a huge salary. Sometime later, the old man announces that the discussions are over and they can look at other applicants. The people thank him while thinking that working there would mean working with the best people in the world and receiving a huge salary. For a researcher, it was paradise. We see a blonde girl introducing herself as Secretary Sophia. The system was being completed faster than expected. The program Robert had developed was working very well. Lei knew that compared to the people working for him, he was nothing. But the most important thing for him to advance humanity at this moment is to evolve himself. Messing with the lifespan of a plant, he says that by accelerating it 100 times, he can make it bloom in 2 minutes instead of 4 hours. He can also make it grow faster by tweaking the correct cells within the seed. He needs to continue researching until he fully understands his abilities. Currently, he is forced to accelerate by 100 times due to his time limit. He wonders if, with more time, he could accelerate even more. And if he had more than 10,000 years or perhaps hundreds of thousands of years, he might be able to go back to the past or accelerate time massively. Everything would become completely different, and he would be the god of that new world. That line was exactly like Kira's Sneaky. Observing the plant, he says that in the past, his target was always life forms. He always tries to affect an organism or an item. But what if he accelerates a specific time in a region and keeps it that way? Perhaps it would create a kind of isolated world. He wonders what would happen if he left an area permanently altered. Seeing the clock on the table, he decides to create a sort of square around it. He accelerates time by 10 times, and the clock starts spinning extremely fast. However, his own time is being drained. He cancels it immediately and is thrown back. In an instant, the clock moved 25 seconds, but he lost 1 year and 13 days. This means a small area of space consumed 32 million seconds, a ratio that makes it impossible to use. If he hadn't pulled his hand away in time, he would have been drained completely. He thinks that the power of time is terrifying. But why did that happen? He is no longer limited by time and destiny. He can control the time of others, so why did this happen? It shouldn't have been impossible, but the experiment failed. He needs to understand the variables, the rules that govern his powers. Thinking about rules, he recalls the values that control the universe. And then he realizes that when he thought of a square, he not only modified the time of that location, but also a small space that stretches throughout the infinite third dimension. The area he tried to modify was infinite, and thankfully he stopped in time. Knowing it would be exponential growth, he is certain he wouldn't have lived for more than 10 seconds. But he laughs, saying it would have been very interesting to see someone with incredible power die like that. He then decides to do his second test. But this time, instead of creating just a square, he creates 3 dimensions around it, considering its movement in space. This means the effect is confined to that location and not affecting the infinite position of that place in time. With this, he calmly watches the clock accelerate from 1 to 10 seconds, and he realizes he has finally stabilized the time change there. In a way, he created a time cube. The next chapter starts by saying that the Eternal Club now has its laboratory, and all employees so far have been handpicked. Those who are employees but not part of the club are gradually expanding. Lai has also established some working relationships with the Hong family and the Song family. While Yanyu hands him a paper, he knows that to dominate that capital, he needs to have control over 4 major families. And now it's time for the Shin family. Peng Hao introduces himself and asks what he was being sought for. Lai tells him to pass on the information he has gathered. Peng Hao explains that this family was already important at the beginning of the capital. However, they have committed every possible crime. And even today, they are a powerful family. But they hide much better than anyone else and are in all the communities of the world. And everyone obeys the head, Chen Yuping. Basically, they are considered the rulers of the underworld in this place. Li asks if nothing they do in the capital is illegal. Peng Hao confirms, saying they only have some maritime companies. But that's a front since they use this company to bring in a lot of illegal stuff. Lai is thoughtful since the head of this family is still very much alive. He can't use the same method as before. Not to mention that even if they have a terminal illness, considering their personalities, they won't be obedient. Li asks about their next move, and Peng Hao says they are coming to a city meeting with the two heads of the family. Now excited, he says if that's the case, he will have to invite them for a visit. Peng Hao is a bit confused, asking if he wants to invite the criminals for a meal. Lai says that using health as negotiation won't work, and since these guys live for power and influence, it might be a good idea for them to see this place. In the rain at the club, new recruits are being trained by Zexer. Suddenly, a stone comes flying and he catches it behind his back. He asks why the kid is throwing stones. Peng Hao says he started it, and a bit later asks what the boss Peng Hao wants. Peng Hao tells him to stop calling him that since nothing has changed. But Zexer says he knows he is one of Mr. Lu's top employees. Tired of it, Peng Hao just gets up and tells him to come quickly. The boss has a mission for an amazing ordinary employee. In the meeting, they are already scared, talking about something being fatal but not killing. Lai says that's exactly it, and it shouldn't leave any trace. Zexer tries to explain that trying to leave someone in a state between life and death is the most difficult thing to do. Lai says that as someone from the Special Forces, he should have sniper experience. In this operation, he will also have Peng Hao's support. Zexer tries to explain that killing someone is easy, but leaving someone almost dead is difficult. Lai tells him not to worry. Even though they are ordinary employees, they will receive certain benefits. Zexer is curious, wondering if he will finally learn what the power is. Observing the arrival of the plan is to remind this family that even though they control this world, they can still be brought to death. And of course, he can also save them. Inside the van, Lai reiterates that the goal is to injure but not kill. But the size of this sniper rifle is such that if it touches any part, everything around it explodes. But Robert is relaying information about the best area to get a good shot. When the opportunity arises, he will disable all cameras in the area and the rest is up to him. Zexer smiles, saying it feels like being back in the armed forces. He looks at Lai and says he will need that favor. With that, our boy accelerates time by 100 times. Zexer gets out of the car and starts running, thinking that at this moment he feels invincible. Robert relays that he has less than a minute, but Zexer replies that it's more than enough time. The cars park and the next second, he is already in position. Ken Yuping get out of the car and Zexer has them in his sights. Everyone's actions are as slow as slugs. However, Peng Hao warns him not to get overconfident and to be careful. Zexer remembers it needs to be a fatal shot, but not immediately fatal. He says he hasn't gone senile yet. Adjusting his aim, he looks through the scope and fires. At that moment, Yuping and the brothers see something hit the ground. Everyone says it was a bullet projectile and looks to the side. Yuping looks confused until he realizes he has been hit in the stomach. He doesn't know when it happened and everyone starts taking cover. The other Chen family members can't believe someone dared to attack them. Zexer is searching for more targets, but the brothers are all hidden. They need to change positions, but Peng Hao says that will take too long. He will handle it. Fallen beside the car, Yuping is there suffering, wondering who has such audacity. The brothers are beside him, telling him to hold on as they will get out soon. They ask if they have caught the assassin, but the guys say they need to save their brother. One explains that the shooter had a silencer and was also waiting, which means they are prepared and will need to be much more careful. But the old man just says he will offer 10 million. That's the price to kill whoever shot. The guy smiles and everyone starts asking what the plan is. They knew the shooter had exited on the other side of the building, so they just needed to provide cover for him. He gave the order for everyone to shoot and created an opening for himself. Passing by the car, he was confident until he felt something pass by. Man, everyone had already been hit, and the next second, they all fell to the ground. One of the brothers wondered how it was possible for everyone to be down at the same time. It was as if there were at least a battalion waiting for them. The security personnel were arriving to help. The brothers saw them approaching and said they were there and needed help. One of the other brothers called for him, but at that moment, something ran by. They didn't know what it was, but it was Peng Hao. The guy didn't understand what was happening and already had a shadow next to him. Peng Hao just touched him, gave him a little prick, and ran off. The guy saw he had been slightly tapped and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, in the car, Lai found everything very tedious. When he received the information that everything was complete, Lai smiled, saying now it was his performance, a race against death. At the hospital, the doctors commented that the guy's condition was not good. They turned and one of the brothers asked if the two would be okay. The doctor said that the injuries they had in the abdomen wouldn't kill them now, but their chances of survival weren't great either. The brother told him to shut up and explain what was happening, pulling him by the shoulder and saying if he didn't tell, he would have to visit his house. With that, the doctors left, saying they would do their best to save them. Lad was just there smiling, thinking that the injuries were worse than he imagined, until the designer girl Yanyu approaches, saying everything is ready. He says it's time to begin then. One of the guys is lying down when he feels something strange. At that moment, someone approaches, saying his time is short. Yuping wonders if it's some kind of god of death. Lai introduces himself as the time seller. He followed the scent of death and ended up in this place. By any chance, would the guy be interested in making a deal with him? The guy doesn't respond, and Lai says all he asks is a small amount, 1/5 of what they make in a year. What they will receive in return is time, and it's good for them to consider the offer because they now have 2 hours left to live. Lee asks if they want the precious life or the precious money. The guy wonders if he can really use money to buy time. He reaches out and says yes, he wants to buy. With that, Yanyu hands them 2 contracts saying they just need to sign as proof of the transaction. The guy thinks a lot of strange things are happening, but he doesn't care. What can a contract do against him? A light in the hallway shines, and at that moment, his time advances to 365 days. The guy says he feels different and sees that the wound has disappeared. But he looks at Lai and says it's too much of a coincidence they were attacked and he appeared like this. However, our boy responds that they need to see it from another perspective. In their line of work, sooner or later, a coincidence like this would happen. Outside, people are still fighting until the doctors enter. However, the 2 guys are already standing, saying they want to leave this hospital. Everyone outside runs in, asking if the boss is okay. Robert informs Lai that he needs to come back quickly because it looks like the guys have recovered and are heading there. Lai doesn't seem to respond, and Robert insists he comes quickly. However, our boy reminds him that if there's one thing he doesn't need, it's to hurry. Robert thinks the bastard is making jokes at a time like this, and Lai just reminds him to erase everything that appeared on any cameras. He says not to worry, that's a done deal. He falls back into his chair, wondering how he forgot the boss's ability. Then suddenly, the app triggers, saying a level 7 talent has been found. Robert checks and sees it's in the United States. He gets excited because finally it's not a Chinese person. At that moment, he sees it's an old man, and his name is Anthony Greta. He seems to recognize him, and the scene shifts to a mansion in the United States. A cat is walking in the house and finds someone lying on the floor. From a computer camera, Robert observes everything and asks what's happening with Mr. Anthony. The man doesn't respond, and he says he will call the police. He hacks into a nearby car's system and asks if anyone is listening. The woman wants to know how he hacked into their radio, but he just tells them that a professor at the University of Illinois needs help. They don't seem to respond, and then he realizes he's speaking Chinese. He tries again in English, telling them to go save him quickly. At least he needs to keep this guy alive until Mr. Lee appears. The women arrive at the door, wondering if this is the place. But another police car from a nearby region also arrives, and she wants to know how someone hacked so many systems. A bunch of police and an ambulance start arriving, and she thinks this is crazy. She approaches the door and sees the man on the floor. The doctors are called, they pick up the body and take him to the ambulance. She finds it strange and wonders who called and what that person's motives were. Some policemen want to find the hacker, but no one has any idea. Robert relaxes, saying now he just needs to inform the boss when he arrives. This Anthony Greta was a guy who contributed a lot to superconductors, basically a genius of the technological revolution. Lai sees the guy has a heart problem, and Robert says he called an ambulance to take him to the hospital. This is a guy smart enough to build rockets, so they need him in the club. He says they need to go to America, but Peng Ha reminds him the Chen family will arrive at any moment. Now he's in a difficult situation. He could send someone as a representative, but how can he convince a Nobel Prize winner in physics? He gets up, and Robert asks where he's going. With that, Tang Lei welcomes him and tells him to take a look. Our boy smiles, saying he seems to be making good progress. He talks about a rat that was consuming a different kind of meat they're producing, and that received a lot of energy instantly. The problem is, after that extra energy, it died shortly after. He then asks Lee for a favor. Lee asks when it is, and the man explains that he wants an area in the lab where time passes faster. That way, they can increase the number of experiments and advance research much better. Lai is impressed that the man seems to already know about his talent for creating a time cube, all through logical deduction of how his power works. The old man asks if it's possible, and Lai says if it's his request, he will make it happen. Sometime later, the old man asks if he's sure, and Lai assures him that he promised, so it will be done. He opens a small area with a time cube, but few people can know about it. Seeing the machine, the old man rushes towards it, asking if it really is what he thinks. Lai explains that time there is accelerated 5 times. Tang thinks it's almost like having the help of a god. Our protagonist then asks if he knows Professor Anthony Greta. The old man thinks and seems to remember. Lai says he wants to invite him to the group, but he needs proof of identity to persuade the man. He asks the old man if he would help with that. The old man says he has an idea of how to convince him. He explains that defective cells can divide up to 54 times before dying. In that crystal is one of those isolated cells, and he tells Lai that he knows what to do. Without saying anything, he takes it and makes the modification. Now the proof of his power is created. Back at the mansion, designer Yanyu is playing cards with everyone. She's humiliating everyone who has no idea how she's so good at it. Then Robert's phone rings, and he sees that Lai has assigned another mission. He finds it strange because usually, Lai does it personally. At that moment, Lee appears, saying this will test the quality of each employee. From now on, they will depend on themselves. He has things to take care of, so he can't personally go to America to meet this Mr. Anthony. So the first task is to see who can bring this renowned physicist to the club using that crystal. All 3 shout that they can do it. Lee asks what Robert wants as a reward, and he says he wants to upgrade his PC with a supercomputer. Our protagonist asks how much that would cost, and Robert says about 3 to 5 million. He gets excited, and Lai says he can travel then. Robert steps back, saying he didn't know if he would have to go out in public. He points to Yanyu and suggests sending her because she has studied in other countries. She says she wouldn't mind doing this mission. Lai says that's a good idea, but they can't send a woman alone to another country. They need someone prepared to ensure her safety. Peng Hao says he's not interested as he's never traveled with a girl, let alone to another country. But Lai says he doesn't need to do anything except ensure her safety. With no option, she gives a little smile, saying he will have to take care of her now. Peng Hao is very upset, thinking that Dan Robert has screwed him over. Outside, Lai says the flight is already booked. In that crystal is an isolated cancer cell. Their mission is to deliver it to the professor, and he will know how to proceed from there. With that, he says he's looking forward to the results, and they depart. Zexer then passes on the information he gathered about the Shen family. It seems they are currently hiding in the capital while investigating the Eternal Club. Lei comments on how influential these guys are. Zexer asks if they should send a warning. Our boy responds no. He likes to work with smart people, and for now, they will just observe what they're doing. After all, what he's most concerned about right now is the group he sent to America. The reward for bringing physicist Anthony Greta will be 500 points. This time, they will have to solve it on their own without his help. Robert provides the information about the room he's in and the illness. Yanyu says they understand, and they arrive at room 205. As they were about to enter the room, a nurse appears, saying that Anthony isn't seeing anyone today. All disheveled, Peng Hao says, "Thank you," but he doesn't understand what she's saying. However, Yanyu explains that they are students of the professor who have come from another country to visit him. The nurse says if that's the case, are very kind, and she informs Mr. Greta that the students have come to visit him. As soon as he sees Yanyu, he asks who they are. She ignores the question and asks if he knows about Professor Tang Zhori. That catches Anthony's attention, and as another doctor tries to enter the room, Peng Hao blocks him. The doctor questions the issue, but Peng Hao just says no. Anthony says it's very sad that Zhori died, but Yanyu reveals that his death was only for the public. Anthony responds that it's impossible since the old man was 102 years old. She says it has nothing to do with age, and pulls out a pendant, saying it's a gift from Zhori. She's sure someone as intelligent as he is will be shocked by what he sees. As he observes, he realizes these are defective cells dividing extremely rapidly. He questions, saying it makes no sense and defies the logic of organisms. She says that as a physicist, he should have an idea of why that is. The old man responds that it doesn't matter. This is something impossible with their current technology. However, Yanyu responds that the impossible was created by her boss. The old man wants to know who they are, and Yanyu asks if he has heard of the Eternals. The professor remembers a study he did on time reversal. In theory, it worked, but it was something impossible to do in the real world. But that crystal in his hand truly demonstrated the ability to manipulate time. With that, he immediately tells Yanyu to take him to meet Mr. Lai. Sometime later, she says this is crazy. Peng Hao says he got this mask from the trainer, and it fits the old man perfectly. Then the nurse appears and tells them to wait. She asks if that's Mr. Anthony, approaching and questioning why he's not resting in bed, why he's standing there. Yanyu apologizes, saying the gentleman asked to take a walk to the bathroom. However, the nurse says she'll have to call the police because she can't let him go like that. Suddenly, another nurse appears, saying they have a major emergency. Peng Hao smiles, knowing what that must be. Yanyu waves goodbye, saying she'll bring him back to the room soon. Anthony then removes the mask, saying their plan seems solid. Yanyu's mouth drops in confusion, but Peng Hao knows it's Robert's doing. With that, he carries the old man on his back and they run to the parking lot. There, they find people waiting for them and everything goes as planned. Robert celebrates, but Lai tells him not to get distracted and to erase all evidence. He reminds him to have brought life support for Mr. Anthony, since they can't afford to lose the man on the flight. Robert replies to relax, everything is prepared. There's no way he'll die on the flight. Lei praises the team, saying their teamwork was impeccable. He gets a call from Zexer, asking what's up. Zexer informs him that a car is coming their way, and it seems to be the Chen brothers. Lai says he understands and tells him to welcome them. The car stops in front of him and Chen Yuping gets out. Zexer gives him a hard look, and the elders say they've come to pay what they owe Mr. Lai. Zexer responds that they are men of their word. However, the entourage or bodyguards will have to stay outside. In Lei's room, he thanks a member of the Hong family, saying they have his gratitude. The man thanks him back and says he's leaving. In the corridors, the Chen family members are angry about being bossed around by Zexer. As the man who was with Li passes by them, they seem to recognize him but aren't sure who he is. They then call out to the protagonist, who turns around. Ken Yuping says hello, and Li asks how their injuries are. The man finds it strange. That day at the hospital, the guy seemed like a god of death. But the man in front of him looks like an ordinary person. However, he says he's here to complete the contract. He reaches into his pocket and hands over 800 million on a card, a fifth of what they make in a year. Lai then explains that the time they were given allowed them to recover their lives, but they still don't have more than a year left. One of the brothers complains, asking if the negotiation was somehow wrong. The protagonist explains that he did nothing wrong. Money is nothing more than a base to make transactions easier. However, if they want to receive more time, they will have to earn it on their own. The brothers seem confused. He pulls out 2 cell phones and informs them that they will have to complete missions to truly become eternal. Sometime later, as they are leaving, they ask Zexer his name. However, he explains that employees there can't give any personal information, so he won't say. Ken Yunan smiles, saying he understands. But upon getting into the car, they are furious. They want to kill Zexer more than they want to kill Mr. Lai. However, the brother next to him tells him to calm down because this seems bigger than them. The man in the front seat says that from the description, the guy they saw must be from the Hong family, and the other at the entrance worked in the special forces. Knowing this, the brother asks what they will do. Yumping smiles, saying they should thank that assassin. Although they have to spend an exorbitant amount of money, they now have found a path to immortality. Not to mention that if even the Hong family is involved, there must be a lot going on. This opportunity was a gift from God for the Shen family to rise to the top again. At the old Young's house, the man who was at Lai's meeting appears, saying he thanked him. Rong says they will always do their best and asks if he saw anything at the club. The man says he saw Chen Yumping and Chen Yunan there. Yang knows these names very well. The brothers' entry mission is posted in the group. They will have to finance the development of a technological region. Immediately, the brother seems to give orders, and they see that the reward is 1,000 points. The other sees that the difficulty is medium, but the reward seems good. Yumping says that according to this contract, they will be able to buy another year. Yunan replies that they will have to complete it then. Yumping says first, they will have to visit the seniors of the club. After all, he didn't see any rule in the contract that prevents them from doing so. The next moment, Elder Rong is informed that the Shen family wants to visit him. Yang asks if they said why, and the young man says they only mentioned the Eternal Club. That catches the old man's attention, and he says it looks like they will have to receive them. Sometime later, they are all gathered around a table. Rong says he wants to ask a question. The Shen brothers say they will answer anything. The old man questions why they were sure they would find him if they mentioned the Eternal Club. The brothers explain that they also visited Mr. Lei and discovered that one of his security guards previously worked for the Rong family. The old man laughs, saying that really fits their style, just as everyone describes them in the underworld. Suddenly, Yumping stands up and says he's not there to cause trouble. The old man just tells him to stop stalling and say what he wants. Yumping begins to explain that their companies are all foreign, so in China, they don't have much to do. The old man cuts him off again and tells him to get to the point about the initiation mission. Yumping says to not waste the old man's time, he will explain. It's a complex mission, but it pays 1,000 points per person. The people from the Rong family are impressed, especially since the missions they receive pay a maximum of 500 points. Obviously, what the guys want is help to complete this mission in the capital. All negotiations are made, but Lai receives a recording from the Rong family. After listening to everything, he tells Zexer to inform the Rong family that they can do what they want, and those 2 brothers will have to be smarter than them. Sometime later, a car stops in front of the mansion. It's Yanyu, Peng Hao, and Anthony, who is impressed with the architecture of the place. Tang Xiaorui approaches and welcomes the old man, asking if he's okay. Anthony seems confused, and the man says they met at the science fair. That's when he realizes it's the old Tang, and he says he looks too young. He wants to ask 1,000 questions, saying this is insane. Someone at 102 years old looking like this, Yanyu informed them that they would have to interrupt this meeting because of his body's condition. Walking through the corridors, Anthony was in disbelief. From the cell in the crystal to this near resurrection of the old Tang, it was as if he was meeting a deity. Yanyu then said he could go in. He hesitated for a second, and the next moment, he opened the door. Seeing the distant figure, he called out to Mr. Lai, who turned and asked how the trip was and if he liked the gift. Anthony was confused. The man in front of him looked too young. Then Lai showed him the time he had left, 3 days and 21 hours. The old man understood immediately what it was about. And Lai said it was a relief he arrived before time ran out. The old man fell to his knees, saying that if magic exists, his entire life has been a lie. Lei ignored this, approached, handed him the contract, and said he must already know the price of becoming part of the club. At that moment, the old man grabbed and signed it. Lai spread his arms, welcoming him, and said that now Anthony Greta is part of the club. The man began to glow, and Lai said if he had questions, they could wait, because now he had plenty of time to ask. The club was slowly growing. More and more people were being recruited. Of course, some problems started to appear. One of the main issues was that his employees now knew much more than he did. Even though he had the power, he didn't fully understand how it worked either. And perhaps one of the most important hires was someone's think about this. The next moment, Robert told him to look at the screen. That person was perfect for liking this video. Do you remember that the last chapter ended with Robert talking to our protagonist? He had used the system to look for intelligent people, and 3 were found. 2 extremely smart old men who could be persuaded to trade their loyalty for extended life, and a woman named Du Weiwen, who was 47 years old. She was the vice president and head of a research team as well as a postgraduate professor. Lai mentioned that she seemed like the best option, but she didn't appear to be sick. Robert explained that it was actually her daughter who needed life extension. It seems that she lost her husband 5 years ago, and now it's just her and her daughter. However, a malignant tumor was recently found in the girl. Our protagonist becomes thoughtful and tells Robert to send her contact information. Robert asks if Lai has really made a decision, to which he replies that maybe he has. He also asks Robert to now look for people desperate for money. With so many people getting involved, he needs more time. The scene shifts to a busy bar. A guy is drinking a beer, slams the table, and asks if he is the so-called Mr. Lin who can get him money. Our protagonist introduces himself, saying yes, he is a seller who has been in this world for hundreds of years. The guy tells him to stop making up stories and quickly asks how he can get the money. Lai says that to simplify, he can buy time and trade it for money. The guy laughs, saying that rich people really like to joke around, and asks how much he thinks his life is worth, stating that he believes he will even pay him 10,000. Lai is wondering where Robert found such a lunatic. The guy says he likes to work whenever he feels like it. If he doesn't have money, he does some work that day and goes to the internet cafe to eat and play games, or he saves up for a while and goes to take a bath. He tells Lai once again to just say the value of his life because he doesn't like to bargain. Strangely, Lai seems startled and says fine. He places a card on the table, saying that it has 300,000, which is the value of a year of the guy's life. The guy reaches out to grab the card, saying he wants to see if it's real, but Lai grabs his hand, telling him not to be impatient because they need to check how much life he has left. The guy looks a bit confused and asks how they will do that. In the next scene, he's already being lifted and Lai smiles. As the guy falls to the ground, Lai says that his remaining life is now his. The guy is there, sweating and wondering if it's true. He says he only went to that bar for a free meal, but what Lai did. This business of buying lifetime is incredible, and he wishes he had met Lai earlier. Now holding the card, he says the protagonist is an angel. He'll be able to spend all day at the internet cafe. Our protagonist suggests that with that money, he could start a small business and live a more stable life. The guy says that makes no sense as people fight for their dreams but die in the end anyway. First, he's just going to go to a fancy place and take a bath. After spending everything, he'll look for Li again. At that moment, our protagonist calls out to Shang Xiaojin and asks if he's not curious about how much lifetime he has left. The guy smiles, saying he's not curious at all because he doesn't want to ruin the mood. He leaves, jumping for joy, while Lai thinks, thank goodness there's no one like him on his team. But at least now he has enough resources to save the girl, so it wasn't such a bad day after all. The next day in a busy hospital, a woman looks at some tests and says she'll have to take her for more tests but doesn't know the details yet. She just hopes things will keep getting worse. Looking to the side with tears in her eyes, she sees her daughter, who smiles back all cheerful. In a specialized neurosurgery clinic, the doctor observes the tests without saying a word. Wei-ren asks how her daughter is. Calmly, the doctor takes off his glasses and informs her that, unfortunately, her tumor has worsened. The mother asks if there's no other way and if nothing can be done, wondering if all of her daughter's suffering has been in vain. She says it doesn't matter how much money it takes, she just wants her to keep living and is willing to do whatever it takes. The doctor apologizes, saying that not even the best neurosurgeon in the world could perform this operation. In the end, the best they can do is slow down the progression a bit and tells her to cherish the last moments with her. The little girl is just thinking about when her mom will buy the promised cake until someone sits beside her. It's Lai who says that waiting at the hospital is much more boring than waiting for a train. Smiling, the girl asks if he has a lot of headaches there too. And he says yes, there are so many strange people he sees that his head starts hurting. She then says that she also has a lot of headaches, but the doctors say it's just the medicine fighting the disease. The only thing she doesn't like is that her hair fell out and she won't be able to go to school for a while. Lai tells her that she seems pretty cool just the way she is, but she replies that she doesn't like this style and when she grows up, she wants to have long hair. At this, Lai activates the watch and sees that unfortunately, she only has 3 months to live. While the girl talks about growing old and having gray hair, he just watches silently until he says that he agrees this style really doesn't suit her. She looks confused and he says he has a little trick. Just then, someone calls out Xuan Zhuan's name and she turns to greet her mom. Her mother comes running, asking what he is doing with her daughter. Lai slows down time. The mother notices that her daughter isn't moving, or rather is moving very slowly. The only strange thing is that the man doesn't seem to be affected. Observing the watch, she realizes that everything is very slow. Lai tells her not to worry because he has no bad intentions. The woman asks if he is really controlling the time of things and Lai is startled. How did she figure it all out when he hasn't said anything yet? Realizing that she understood everything so quickly excites Lai. She repeats the question while he thinks she's exactly the kind of talent he wants. The mother shouts again, telling him not to do anything to her daughter. But Li adjusts his glasses, saying that is the furthest thing from happening, especially since he came to save her daughter. He could make her have a life as normal as anyone else's. The mother is left with her mouth open and quickly focuses, thinking that if he is willing to save her daughter, she is willing to do anything. She asks what price he wants her to pay. Lai says he admires her knowledge and the way she does things. Approaching the daughter, he says he won't do anything against her wishes. The mother tells him to take his hand off, and at that moment, her daughter's remaining lifespan appears. She sees the 3 months and Lai says she must know what that means. He's there for a hunt for human talents. Activating the golden light on the girl, the mother calls out her name and her lifespan increases by a year. The mother is shocked to see this, and Lai informs her that this 1 year was basically a gift, but isn't a cure for the disease. She talks about this talent hunt business and asks if he wants her to work for him. Lai responds that no, he wants her to work for the Eternal Club. She asks what kind of club that is, and he explains that their existence is to help immortals live a better life. The mother says that if he is there, he must have researched her, and there are things she won't do even if he uses her daughter against her. Lai says she doesn't need to worry, and that the club welcomes her. She thinks that if such an organization truly exists, they must rule the world. When she agrees and says she has a request to make, Lai vanishes in front of her and her daughter screams. Looking to the side, the girl now has a full head of hair. She says that the man who was just there said he would help and actually perform magic. Another doctor approaches, saying that the mother forgot about the tests and sees the girl with long hair, asking if she can leave the hospital. The doctor is confused because the therapy had already started, so the girl shouldn't have that much hair. The mother immediately asks the doctor to run another test on her daughter. In the car, someone says it will be a pleasure to have Ms. Waiwen in the club. It's Yanyu, who says she hasn't agreed to anything yet and is curious to know what they do. The actress responds that for now, they are just a club recruiting people, but soon they will become the gods of this world. The word gods leaves Waiwen confused. Tang Yanyu opens the door and welcomes her. Walking through the place, she finds the construction marvelous. In the room, Xiaohui is talking to Greta about the things they are doing when Tang Yanyu passes with a new member. Xiaohui asks if this is the new player. Waiwen says she is just passing through but seems to notice something. The man in front of her looks a lot like Mr. Tang, who had died. Yanyu calls her, but that idea doesn't leave her mind. The more she looks, the more he seems familiar. Until, while going up the stairs, she calls out to Xiaohui. He suddenly turns around and she is certain it is him. A while later, she says she understands that his death was only for the public and mentions that she even attended the old man's funeral. Xiaohui says it's funny to meet someone who went to his own funeral, while Waiwen thinks that having a 100-year-old person with such vitality is almost unbelievable. Wulai comes down the stairs, saying they seem to be having a very fun conversation. Greta immediately runs to talk to Wulai about something regarding the virus, but Xiaohui says for now it's better for him to talk to the guest. Our protagonist adjusts his glasses, saying it's all right, and mentions that it's a good opportunity for her to understand a bit more about them. They explain that they are trying to solve a problem with injections they are giving to rats but haven't found a solution. It's a type of material that would be capable of stopping any bleeding, and the idea comes from some principles of slugs. It would be perfect for reconstructing cartilage, arteries, or even organs. Waiwen seems to recognize this as hinoacrylate, a type of fiber adhesive. She knows it's a type of biomaterial that would create a revolution, changing everything for the next 100 years. Hearing this made her certain that the man was Tang Xiaohui. Knowing his personality and that he had faked his own death, it was clear that this place didn't follow immoral paths. Greta then called out to Mr. Liu, saying they needed to increase the size of the biology lab to speed up the process. Waiwen just observed, recognizing many names she had heard before, which made her wonder what other specialists would join this team. Either this young man was the most ambitious person she had ever met, or he was the key to the evolution of humanity. If that were the case, it wasn't just about her daughter's life anymore. She then called out to Mr. Liu and said that after listening to these conversations, she had ideas about the development of the Eternal Club, asking if he wanted to hear what she had to say. He got excited and told her to share everything. In the next scene, he congratulated her, saying that from now on she was the 6th member of the club. At that moment, she felt a strange energy in her body, indicating that the contract's rules were no joke. Mr. Liu then asked her to share everything she believed would be good for the development of the place. Waiwen thought that now that she had accepted the position of planner, she would give it her all. And boy, her all was more than I imagined. 5 minutes later, our protagonist explained the group's current situation and asked what she thought. Waiwen was impressed. She didn't realize that the place was already so complete. This was the chance she needed to demonstrate her knowledge, so she announced that she had opinions on everything. She said that no matter how the club developed, the core should be immortality and time. However, beyond that, the rest of the concept was too basic. Lou was confused because she hadn't said much, and Waiwen explained that the club currently had no system besides a few important names. What they needed was a complete structure with hierarchies and a system for each member, as well as traditions and conditions for entry. All of this would create a foundational belief system for the club. The place didn't just need a future, it also needed a past. They needed to make people believe that they had existed for a long time in this world, something that would make the club's legitimacy unquestionable. Lou was impressed by her attention to detail, already imagining that she had passed the test perfectly. The woman also commented that they needed to greatly improve how they recruited members. Currently, the only method of invitation was selling time to allow entry, that they needed to create other representatives who could spread the club's name. Perhaps creating a medicine that slightly increased people's lifespans would allow them to invite other members without exposing their identities. Lu pondered this idea of a representative, but realized they would make things more meticulous and faster. It was a doable plan that wouldn't take too long. She then said that she had some additional ideas about how to buy time and mentioned meeting Professor Tang and Anthony to discuss their feasibility. Our protagonist wanted to hear her plan first. She said she had a question. With Tang and Anthony's knowledge, was it possible to create a time bank or something even more ambitious? Considering the powers and variables he had mentioned, she wondered if it was possible to create a miniature world. Outside, Anthony and Greta were silent. Anthony commented that the woman didn't seem to have simple plans, and Xiaowei said that the fact she waited until she was facing away to call his name showed she was smart. Tang Yanyu then approached and told them to enter the room. Weiwen was saying that the club needed enough power and influence so they wouldn't have to hide. They could build a real-time bank, a place where people could not only buy but also sell time, maximizing their profit. Of course, for it to work, they would need contracts and rules. This idea excited the protagonist. A time bank wasn't a bad idea. Anthony and Xiaowei then asked if she was calling for them. Lu said they arrived just in time to consider an idea. He mentioned that Weiwen had something to ask, and she wanted to know if, with their current abilities, it was possible to create a replica of the world from millions of years ago, or, for example, regress a spore to the moment everything began. Xiaowei seemed to understand what she was asking, and she asked if it was possible to alter the path of an organism's evolution. Anthony said that was beyond reality, and Xiaowei added that it would be extremely dangerous. However, Lai interrupted, saying he wanted an analysis of this unrealistic idea. In other words, he wanted a plan to make it real. The scholars looked at each other, and Anthony said that 6.6 billion years ago was when the ingredients for life were created, and that's how life began in the Milky Way. 3.8 billion years ago was when the continents were forming, and shortly after that was the birth of the oldest organisms. Billions of years later, they evolved and became more complex. Xiaowei said that if they had the best scientists from around the world, it might indeed be possible to replicate the moment of life's creation. Weiwen questioned if he really thought it was a viable plan. He explained that creating a genetic spore would be like playing the role of God. But yes, it was something that could be done. Weiwen explained that if this were possible, they could create new lives. By accelerating time, they could evolve these organisms into colonies, and then Lai could collect the lifespan of these colonies. Essentially, they would create a time production machine. Xiaowei said that while all this was possible, they were very far from achieving something like that. Li pondered all these ideas. The only variable he feared was his own time power. But if he could actually accomplish this, it would be like having an infinite stock of time. Adjusting his glasses, he said it was a crazy idea, so crazy that it would be called the World Creation Plan. He then informed the three that this plan was the new primary objective of the Eternal Club. Until it was resolved, this would be their main mission, and all three of them would have to work directly towards this goal. In addition to the Dark Energy Plan and the Life Engineering Plan, these three would be where the funds were invested, and the last one would be the Earth's Environmental Protection Plan. All three plans had to proceed without destroying Earth because to achieve what no one else had, they would need a lot of time on this planet. Sometime later, the scientists walked through the corridors saying that this idea might be too grand. Xiaowei explained that if it were the will from before, he would have reacted the same way. However, now he accepted this plan and told Anthony to take a look at themselves. We're two old men who should be dead, but they were there discussing theories. If someone could control life and death, then there was nothing they couldn't achieve. Anthony pondered this. To him, Mr. Lu was someone on the path to becoming a god. Weiwen asked if she would have to isolate herself from society now that she was part of this place. Lu said her case was different and isolation wasn't necessary. She could continue living as she always had. He just asked her to bring her daughter there tomorrow, which confused her. Lai said he would extend her daughter's life once and for all. This relieved Weiwen, as she thanked him. He told her to sit down as he wanted to discuss the representative. Handing over an envelope, he said that these were old friends and currently the best clients. Selecting one of the former clients to be a representative was something he had thought of, and if she had the same idea, he believed it was indeed a good plan. Looking at one of the photos, she recognized Mr. Hong. He says he didn't imagine that he had contact with these people. He mentions that considering this guy is connected to all the people in high society and communicates well, he seems like the best choice. The only detail is that she would have to meet him in person to better understand the situation. Lai said it's perfect for him and will let her handle this task. She thanks him while he thinks he really needs to give up this kind of authority. The only thing he will always control is time, so his place is guaranteed. Now he just needs to keep an eye on the performance of each of the employees. At Mr. Hong's house, they are gathered around a table talking about a celebration he was invited to. One of them comments that the old man was only called because they want to see the condition of his father's body. They drink soup and say that people don't change their habits. They speculate that they must be wondering about the potion he drank. One of them asks if it wouldn't be better to refuse this request. He said it's better not to because it would be suspicious to do something like that. Since they are curious about his health, he will go take a look. At that moment, a guy comes in holding a cell phone saying there's a call for him. Upon answering, it's Tang Yanyu and he looks startled. He listens to some information, agrees, and says it's okay. At the table, everyone asks what happened and Hong informs them that he wants to see them. People wonder if it's a mission, but Hong says he's not sure. It's something about the club. People seem curious, as it's the first time someone has been called there. Hong doesn't say anything and people start to wonder if it might be because of those brothers. Hong tells them to calm down because they've laid all the cards on the table and never hidden anything. Whether it's good or bad, they'll have to go there to find out. Next scene, Tang Yanyu is already announcing that Mr. Hong has arrived. Lai says he's very quick, expecting Mr. Hong to arrive in the afternoon. Hong says he would never delay in, responding to a request from Mr. Liu. Just then, he turns around as someone calls him. It's Waiwen who says it's a pleasure to meet him. Hong asks who she is and Lin introduces her as the group's planner. The old man observes her and thinks that this woman's eyes carry a knowledge beyond her years. He says it's incredible for her to hold such an important position at a young age. She replies that he praises her too much. Lai just watches as the two manage to converse without passing any information and still remain polite. She looks at him and he gives the signal. With that, Lai calls for Hong, informing him that he was invited because of an important mission. The old man agrees, saying he just needs to say. Our boy says that he, as a member of the Hong family, has been invited to be one of the club's representatives. Hong seems confused and asks if they are really talking about him. Waiwen explains that due to the Hong family's influence in society, he was chosen. They would be tasked with managing an experimental laboratory, and occasionally the Hong family would participate in private meetings and market some medicinal products, all branded as created by the Hong family. Li keeps an eye on things, and the old man thinks it over until he says he understands. It's an opportunity full of benefits, and the reason he received this proposal is so that the Hong family can bring in some special clients. Lai states that this will be the role of a representative and asks for the old man's response. Hong says he's happy to receive so much trust, but he's old and not as sharp as before, so he'll need some time to think about it. Waiwen explains they have many other options but chose Hong because of his family and achievements. Lai stands up, saying he'll explain further. He not only wants Hong to be a representative, but also someone reliable to help manage the club in the future. He understands it's a difficult decision for him, and he shouldn't take it to heart. He tells Waiwen to contact the other options. At this point, the old man admits that age has caught up with him. He hadn't realized Mr. Liu was putting in so much effort. If that's the case, he can leave the role of representative to him. Lai smiles, saying that plenty of challenges will soon come his way. He tells Hong to go home. He'll be notified of all the plans soon. With that, the old man leaves and Lai slumps in his chair, saying he didn't think convincing Hong would be so difficult. Waiwen questions if they can really count on him given his hesitation. Lai says it's better this way because a representative shouldn't be swayed by temptation. Someone who has made important decisions throughout their life is the right person for this job. Just like in any business, an easy negotiation doesn't guarantee a promising future. Removing his glasses, he says people really do get smarter with age. With this mission completed, Waiwen announces it's time to think about the secret base they're going to create, something hidden beneath society. As the club grows, it will attract more attention, so they need to adapt in advance. Li ponders this idea of a secret base. Meanwhile, in the city of Sing, someone greets Mr. Zhao. They are two officials from the research department. The guy asks what they want. She says she has a lot to ask. This Mr. Zhao is the brother of the guy that Peng Hao killed, and he asks what brings such important people to his place. He's just a citizen who follows the laws. The woman in the glasses tells him to relax, that they're not there for their business, and the other replies that she does believe that he's a citizen who follows the laws. Zhang tells them to stop stalling and say why they're there. The woman says she's there to retrieve something that belongs to them. The footage from that day, she warns that she knows very well he has the video of his brother's death. Zhang is shocked, wondering how they know this information. He thinks about saying something, but she tells him to stop pretending, already saying she's sure he's scared, and warns that if he keeps hiding, some problems might appear for his family. Zhang hesitates for a second and tells someone from the family to bring that damn video soon. With that, the woman already has the video in hand, saying it was easy. From afar, he shouts that he gave them what they wanted, so they better disappear. The woman says he can relax, especially because the things he's been doing are of no interest. With that, the women leave, and Zhang wonders what case attracted the attention of Department Zero. He already hesitates and then starts laughing. Apparently, these women will spare him the trouble of researching who it was. Already in the car, they warn that they're sending the video. A guy with glasses says that now that they have the evidence, they just need to get the witness. He tells someone to say the name, age, and occupation. In the room are Chen Yuping and Si Dahai. Both are being investigated by the police. The guy says his bank account received 1.3 million and asks where it came from. Dahai says he signed a document that he can't talk about, so he asks them not to ask. This leaves the man intrigued, especially because Chen Yuping said the same thing. The interviewer asked her about the money and asked if she could explain. Stumbling over her words, she said she only did it to help her son, but doesn't know anything. The woman throws some papers on the table and says her son lied about the university and has already spent all the money she gave. Looking at the photos, she asks her mother if what she did was worth it. That made the mother cry, wondering why her son lied like that. She murmurs to herself that she spent her own lifetime, so why does he act like this? The guy with the glasses just watches, thinking that now the hardest part has been discovered. In the meeting, watching the screen, they see the scene of the dog. In a second, he was turned and killed. People were shocked and couldn't believe what they saw. In the meeting, the guy says this proves the existence of something special. Then he says the speed will now be reduced by 10 times. At that moment, you can see the attack being made, and people ask if this is real. The guy says yes, the only thing that was modified is the time. One of them asks if they're really saying someone can accelerate their own time. At this point, the guy says with new computers, they slowed down 64 times. Because of this, for a moment, you can clearly see Peng Hao. People are shocked that something like this really exists. And the guy with glasses explains that considering the witnesses, the people they are against can negotiate and even control time. The question remains why he buys and why he is so generous with the values. In addition, the witnesses do not provide any information because of some contract. The person who has this has abilities that surpass current human knowledge. However, the people there today are experts in various areas of human society, and everyone's function will be to gather as much information as possible about this person. They need to figure out how they want to influence society, and whether this person is an existence that needs to be eliminated. One of the elders says that would be impossible considering these abilities, because if he can accelerate time, maybe he could see the future. The guy in the gray suit says that's unlikely, because they easily manage to contact the clients. The guy says okay and asks to show the video again. He tells the people to observe the movement as he attacks, and asks the guy from the special forces if they could defeat him. The old man understands what the guy means, and he explains that it's impossible to touch a person like that, let alone eliminate them. One of them there says that lately someone has been studying the process of speeding up thought. When someone reaches this state, it's almost as if they really accelerate. The question remains if this ability is connected to that. And the most dangerous thing is that something like this has the power to destroy the existence of the world. Regardless of the type of weapon, there will always be a sitting target for someone like that. Any kind of attack against this entity will create a unilateral massacre. The guy asks if he says not to make an enemy of this person, and the bald guy says yes, since they can't win. Maybe the main goal was to make him an ally. After the meeting, everyone in the parking lot is talking about looking at the documents. The guy with glasses gets in the car and answers the director, saying he will pass on the information. But at that moment, he receives the news to stop investigating. The guy seems to have told him to pass this case to other people, and he is confused. The old man hangs up the phone, wondering why they spent so much energy if this case was for someone else. Meanwhile, at the Eternal Club, Lai is just observing. Zhavoy is on a call saying he guarantees something. Li asks if Tang is really talking to the secret organization. Weiwen says yes, that old man has been around for a long time and knows many people. Our protagonist warns that he was supposed to be dead, so this would attract more attention. She smiles at him, and he understands, especially since this is the most secretive organization in the country. At that moment, Ji always says it's time to tell Lai and hands him the phone, saying it's for him. Weiwen mentions that it's an incredible opportunity, and he says it's okay. He knows what to do. He takes the phone and asks what the person wants. The guy on the other end says like this video is to help Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.